I was trying to think about where to start this tale, and I think I will begin on that Friday night in April. I may jump around a bit for some background, but let's start on that Friday. It was Friday afternoon, a little after 5 o'clock, and I was done with work for the week. The weather in Oregon can be unpredictable in April, but today was gorgeous, almost 70 degrees, sunny, and not a cloud in sight. I was in a good mood, work week over, and this great weather. What was I going to do this weekend? That's when my mood went south. I had no plans, no dates, nothing to do. I had been divorced for 3 years, was 28 years old at this point in the story, and not dating anyone. I had tried online dating with no luck, just a waste of money. Most of my friends were married, and a couple of the blind dates they had set me up on were flops. My ex was in a solid relationship with a woman who might be my closest female friend. Creeping into my head was the thought, what's wrong with me? I pulled up to my house and felt momentarily better, looking at the structure through my boss. I had gotten a great deal on the house. It was definitely a fixer-upper, and I had spent a lot of time trying to get it back in shape. I had made progress. The 1950s-era mid-century modern had been a reclamation project, and I had invested a lot of time and money to get it to the point it was at now. My industry connections in the lumber business had helped. I got home, grabbed my running gear, and went to change. I looked at myself in the mirror, 6 feet 0 inches, fairly solid, 190 pounds, not washboard, but certainly some visible abdominal muscles. According to my ex, I was not bad looking, so what was wrong with me? How was it that I hadn't had a meaningful date in many months? I was starting to get depressed, so I took off on my run. I always felt better after a workout and was enjoying a beer in the late afternoon sunshine on my back deck when my cell buzzed. It was my ex-brother-in-law, Mike. "Hey, Cam, what's shaking?" Mike is in finance and manages the little money I have. He's really good. His wife, Megan, is beautiful, fun to talk to, and keeps his enormous ego in check. "What do you have going on tomorrow?" Knowing I had nothing but reluctant to admit it, I implied I was busy but had some flexibility in my schedule. "Don't tell me the old man has you working on Saturday?" A little background. I work at Specialty Timbers. Mike's father, Ted Robinson, is the owner and my boss. My ex, Kimberly, is the accountant and Mike's sister, and Ted's daughter. Mike never went into the lumber business. He got an MBA and now has his own investment business, Robinson and Associates. Growing up, my mom, my sister, and I weren't exactly poor, but we flirted with that socioeconomic status. In high school, anything beyond the basics, I had to pay for myself. After football season my junior year, I went to the counseling center and found a lead for a job at a company within bicycle distance of my mom's place. I knew if I ever were to get a car, no one was going to help me pay for it. That Tuesday at 4 p.m. was the first time I entered the front door at Specialty Timbers. It was an open office with windows to the warehouse at the back and 3 private offices on the left-hand side. I checked my note card and asked for Mr. Haney. 10 minutes later, an older, short guy with long hair falling in his face walked up. "I'm Skip Haney," he said, offering a large, rough hand with part of his pointer finger missing. We walked to one of the offices, which was filled with files, magazines, catalogs, and blocks of wood everywhere. He sat behind his desk, put his feet up, and asked me what I knew about the lumber business. "Not very much," I replied, probably not the best answer if I wanted the job. "Then why are you wasting my time?" I was nervous and intimidated and didn't know how to answer. He just stared at me. Finally, I said, "Mr. Haney, I need a job and I promise you I will work hard." He kept staring for a good 30 seconds without saying a word. I was thinking about what other jobs were on the board at the counseling center when, all of a sudden, he said, "Be here tomorrow at 3:30 and be prepared to work." I was shocked, stood up, shook his hand, and left. I noticed a tall, balding man poke his head out of the last office and look at me. Little did I know how the path of my life had just changed. So, back to that Friday in April, sitting on my deck and talking to Mike. "No, I'm not working this weekend, just a lot of errands to try to get done." "Oh, tomorrow is Saturday, and there is an event at the fairgrounds. I need you to be there with me. Megan has a couple of friends coming, and I need you to be there with me." I actually wouldn't mind going, but I had to act like I didn't. Before I could even start any protest, Mike said, "I'll pick you up at 11 o'clock." Then I heard the dial tone. I guess I'm going to the spring fair. I met Mike Robinson the same day that I met my ex-wife. By the end of my junior year, I had been working at Specialty Timbers 5 days a week, from 3:30 to 6 o'clock, and occasionally on Saturdays if they needed it. I had bought a very used Corolla with lots of miles on it, but it ran well and got good gas mileage. I made just about enough to pay for insurance, get some gas, and I was left with about $10 extra per week to help my mom. I was excited to start working full-time, from 7 to 3:30 every day, now that school was out for the summer. On the Tuesday after Memorial Day, I showed up bright and early to start my first full day of work. The shop lead was a wiry man named Don Smith. It was Don, or Smitty, who was my supervisor during my after-school working days. Smitty knew all the machines in the shop, watched over inventory, and supervised deliveries and receipt of materials. He basically ran the back-end operations. He taught me a lot, and this summer, I was going to learn more about how the milling, veneer, and other machines worked. My job was primarily running the machines and maintenance. What I knew, I learned from Smitty. That Tuesday, I was informed I had a 15-minute break at 10 a.m., 30 minutes for lunch at noon, and then off at 3:30. Smitty sent me to the break room at 10 o'clock, a place I'd never been before. It was on the far side of the office near the women's bathroom. As I entered the break room, I first saw this preppy little punk smirking at me. I guess it was because of the way I was dressed. "Hi, Smitty, you're going to cause an energy crisis," he said. I was wearing an old pair of overalls Smitty had given me, which still had the oval tag with his name sewn onto the bib. It was smeared with oil from my work on the equipment. That wasn't the worst of it. Immediately, I heard a giggle, and there was a girl about my age, good-looking, giggling behind her hands at me. Who were these people? I had never seen them before at Specialty Timbers. Just then, the owner, the tall man who had looked at me on the day of my interview, yelled at them to knock it off. I quickly got to the break room away from these two smug kids. As I sat, embarrassed, and drank a cup of coffee, the owner came into the break room. In all the months I'd worked there, I had never spoken to him. Don't mind them. They're just my spoiled children. They are working here this summer, but to be honest, I'm not sure what Mike is being paid for. We've never formally met. "I'm Ted Robinson," he said, offering his hand. I mumbled, "Cameron Joseph," as we shook hands. "Good to meet you, Cameron. I'm hearing good things about you from Smitty. Let's talk again later this summer. In the meantime, ignore those two jackasses." And that was my first encounter with Mike and Kimberly Robinson. I heard the horn of Mike's black BMW that Saturday morning, only 20 minutes late. "Where's Meg?" I asked. "She met Brandy and Celia for coffee downtown. We're meeting them at the fair." Brandy and Celia. I wonder if this is a setup, I thought. We parked and walked a few blocks to the fairgrounds. I've got to drop this by the fair office. RA is a co-sponsor of the event, and Mike was delivering his company brochures. The girls are over by the booths. As we walked up, I saw the gorgeous blonde and smiling Megan, who gave Mike a kiss and introduced me to Brandy and Celia. Brandy had long, dark, straight hair and was very curvy but had a bit of a hard look. She was showing a little cleavage, and I had to keep my eyes up when we shook hands. Celia was different, dark curly hair, an athletic build, and a ready smile. She stared into my eyes and said, "Nice to meet you, Cameron. I've heard about you." I sneaked a glance at Megan, and all I saw was a sly smile. My weekend was definitely getting better. As a group of 5, we wandered the fair, and I found myself often strolling alongside Celia. She had a nice way of looking me right in the eye when we talked. She had a great laugh, and I found myself being outgoing and witty. Every so often, I would glance over at Mike and catch him smiling at me. It was turning out to be a great day. We spent several hours checking out all the exhibits, occasionally running into acquaintances and having a good time. Mike knew a lot of people, and this was networking for his business. We decided to go to Mallory's to grab a beer and try to get an outside table. Brandy decided to head home, something about a headache, and Mike said we would make sure that Celia had a ride. We found a great outdoor table, and the sun felt wonderful. Mike told lots of funny stories about work, marriage, and his family. I tried to remember the last time I had such a good time. Celia was fun to talk to, interesting, and asked me questions about myself. After Mike ordered a third round, I made the offhand comment, "For sure, I need to run tomorrow." Celia asked where I ran, and before I knew it, we had a running date for Sunday at 9 a.m. Eventually, we left. I was having such a great time with Celia, talking, laughing, and learning about each other's lives. It was very nice, we just seemed to click. I was hoping there wasn't some significant other in her life. We dropped her off at her condo, and I told her I would pick her up at 9 o'clock for the run on the Rad to Indran Trail. As soon as we were heading home, I got the look from the front seat. "What?" I asked. They gave me the smirking grin. "Okay, so she's cool. What do you want from me?" Mike grinned. "Ever since Kim and I divorced, Mike's been trying to find me a new woman. I actually think he feels a little responsible for my failed marriage with his sister. He may have known about her orientation beforehand, but he never said so. I had worked at Specialty Timbers all through my senior year after school. Once football was done, I even worked Saturdays in the fall. I was learning from Smitty all about the machinery from the inside out. During busy weeks, I was asked to run equipment on Saturdays, and I ran everything but the veneer press, learning the capabilities of all the machines. Kim came in on Saturdays and helped with the books. She went to a private high school on the other side of town, so this was the only time I got to see her. She was really cool, fun to talk to, and not stuck up like other rich kids. About halfway through our senior year, we started dating. What began as friendship soon turned into a relationship, and before we graduated, we had begun having sex. Kim had a tight body with a beautiful bum and small but perky breasts. I loved making love to her, and in retrospect, I realized she wasn't as into it as I was. But I was blinded by my own lust, and during those moments, I didn't notice. We both graduated and worked at Specialty Timbers that summer. I wasn't sure what I was going to do in the fall, but Kim was going to Colorado College. I was concerned about being apart and about other guys. Little did I know, other guys would never be a problem, just the distance. When I would bring any of this up to her, all she would say is, "Don't worry, you're the only man for me." She was honest, she just didn't mention other women in the equation. Late that summer, my boss, Kim's dad Ted Robinson, approached me and asked about my plans for the future. I really didn't know what was going to happen. I had an application for Lane Community College on my dresser, but even as inexpensive as community college was, I didn't have the money for it. It turns out Mr. Haney had cancer and was only coming in a few days a week, and that wouldn't last for long. "Cameron, you know our shop. You're good with our customers, and I need some youth in this office. I was thinking of having you work with Smitty when needed in the shop, but mostly I want you in the office learning the business side of Specialty Timbers," Ted said. I was shocked. "I'm going to start you at $3,000 a month, and when times are good, there are year-end bonuses." I immediately accepted and couldn't help but wonder if my relationship with his daughter helped me get this position. On Monday, I started in the office. I showed up in my shop clothes, and Ted immediately sent me home to change. I began learning the business. I wasn't impressed with Ted's knowledge but appreciated his easygoing yet confident way with customers. I had a good knowledge of products and what our machinery could do, but I didn't know much about pricing, customer relations, or the accounting side of the business. Ted was helpful and patient with me. After an initial nervousness around him, I became much more comfortable. I stayed in touch with Kim while she was at college and felt like our relationship was staying strong through the fall. I picked Celia up Sunday morning at 9 o'clock for a run. She was in maroon tights and a tight-fitting Lululemon top. She looked awesome, her athletic body topped by those black curls, dark eyes, and great smile. We chatted comfortably as we drove to the trailhead. I normally do the 5-mile loop. "You okay with that?" I asked. She was. We stretched and took off. When running with someone else for the first time, you kind of have to find their rhythm, slightly speeding up or slowing down. At first, we didn't have to, we were in sync immediately. We chatted as we ran, and I found out she was a dental hygienist from the Bay Area. Her dad had passed away, he had worked for the railroad, and her mother worked in a hair salon owned by her mother's sister. Her mom was of Italian heritage, Anna Maria Till was her mother's maiden name. That's where she got her curly dark hair. Talking the whole way, we made the 5-mile loop and were back at the car by 10:30. It was so pleasant, I could have run another 5 miles with her. I suggested coffee, and we went to a nearby cafe. I had learned from Mike and Megan the night before that there were no known boyfriends or significant others. I did a mental checklist: 1, no boyfriend; 2, fun to be with and she seems to like me; 3, great looking. I began to think my bad luck might have changed. Unfortunately, I knew I still had a lot to do at home. The tile on the fireplace was half done, and the backer board for the shower was sitting in the garage. Celia, I'm having a great time with you, but I have to get going. I'd like to see you next weekend. Are you available? Yes, I think so. How about we do something Saturday, she replied. We exchanged phone numbers and then headed home. I considered a kiss or a hug or something. I felt so close to her, but decided I would do this right and take it slow. I was pretty happy as I got home and got to work. As the week started, I debated the proper time to firm up our plans for the coming weekend. I texted her Monday after work and asked if she wanted to hike to Rainbow Falls during the day and then grab some dinner afterward. She texted back enthusiastically and added heart emojis, our first official date. Tuesday was a busy day at Specialty Timbers. Ted was in Seattle working with a big potential client, and one problem after another surfaced that I had to fix: a late shipment, an unhappy customer, and one of the custom milling machines went down while Smitty was working on the veneer machine. I didn't get home until after 7. I was beat. While I was defrosting a frozen pizza, my phone buzzed, indicating a text. What now? I thought. To my utter delight, it was a checking-in message from Celia. My mood immediately changed, and we ended up texting back and forth for over an hour. It all felt so easy and natural. I know it has been less than a week, but wow, I was excited about a woman for the first time in a long, long time. Wednesday night I texted her, and we had another nice back and forth session. Thursday night, she initiated the conversation, and we discussed some of the details of our Saturday plans. That night, I called Mike and caught him while he and Megan were out to dinner. He said he'd call me back. They called back on their way home. Hey, what's shaking, Romeo? I heard Megan giggle. Just checking in with you guys. How was dinner? I was trying to shift the conversation towards Celia without sounding eager in front of Megan. Oh, you don't care about our dinner? But we do know you're seeing Celia this weekend. Your run date must have gone well. I told them the run was good and that she seemed like a nice girl. Did you get her in the sack yet? Mike asked. Don't be an a-hole. Not everyone thinks like you, Megan said laughingly. We talked a bit more, joking and having a good time, then it was time to hang up. Man, I have not heard you this excited about a woman since my sister, Mike said. I explained that I liked her so far. As we were hanging up, I heard Megan say, just be careful, Cam. I wonder what she meant by that, I thought. Friday after work, I had just finished my run and was sitting on the back deck, having a beer. What a difference a week made. Last week at this point, I was feeling down about myself. Today, I was feeling very good. At 8 o'clock, I sent Celia a text, checking a few details about our date tomorrow and just seeing what she was up to. I checked my phone at 9:30, but there was no reply. That was a little unusual. Oh well, I'll see her tomorrow. I picked her up at 1 p.m., and we headed east into the mountains toward the trailhead. Something seemed a bit off. She was still nice and relatively affectionate, but without the usual energy. When I asked how she was doing, she said she was just a little tired, it had been a long week. Before I could learn more about her long week, she started asking about the hike. No more explanation on the long week. We enjoyed the hike, and when the trail was wide enough, we walked side by side, and she held my hand. This small intimacy felt so good after all this time. The plan was to drop her off at home so she could change and get cleaned up, then swing back at 7 o'clock for dinner at Macedo downtown. She looked great in tight jeans and a form-fitting top. She gave me a big hug and kiss when I got there. I almost thought if I pushed it, we could be in her bed fairly quickly, but I remembered I was going to play this one differently. The restaurant was cozy with wonderful food and delicious wine. We split a bottle of wine and each had a brandy as we enjoyed dessert. I knew I should sober up a little before heading home, so I suggested we walk around the square. This is an area downtown closed to vehicles, with cafes, retail shops, bars, and other restaurants. The night was pleasant, and Celia snuggled up to me as we walked. I think we were both feeling good, a little tipsy but happy, with comfortable, easy conversation as we strolled past couples and groups of people. As we were heading back, I noticed a group of young men ahead. As we angled past them, one of them suddenly shouted, "CCE." I was immediately on guard, but Celia moved toward them, smiling and accepting hugs from 3 of these guys. "Hey, girl, what's happening? What are you doing down here?" Meanwhile, I was standing there, ignored, as they all connected. After what felt like a lot longer than a minute, Celia turned to me, flush-faced, and said, "Cameron, these are my friends Bobby, JT, and Marcus." I automatically reached my hand out to shake theirs. The 3 looked at each other, smiled, and elaborately attempted to shake my hand with all kinds of gyrations. They chatted for 10 minutes about things I didn't follow. I gathered it was about music in a club I had heard of called Evolution. There was an overwhelming familiarity between Celia and these guys. I observed an intimacy, especially with the one named Marcus, that was curious to the point of being unsettling. I felt all the warmth and goodwill of the evening draining away. By my observation, she seemed to be enjoying the attention and the company of this group. Finally, with hugs and light kisses, they parted. "Nice to meet you," I said. Marcus just nodded, and they turned and went the other way. About 15 seconds later, I heard them hoot with laughter. Celia snuggled back up with me, but my relaxed mood from earlier was gone. Were these the kind of friends she had? Nothing wrong with them, but they clearly weren't my scene. She talked about them a bit, and I gathered that Evolution was a dance club in the old section of town that was once an old warehouse. She told me how fun it was and that we should go. I chuckled and said I was not a great dancer. "No one cares, it's just a place to have fun," she replied. We drove home, and I tried to be upbeat, but something about that whole scene held me back from being as affectionate as I had felt earlier in the evening. When we got to her place, I walked her to the lobby and gave her a hug goodbye. "Do you want to come up for coffee?" Normally, this would be a no-brainer, but a combination of wanting to do the right thing and also sheltering myself from getting hurt stopped me. "Thanks, but I'm okay. I'll see you later." I gave her a quick hug and a kiss on the cheek and left. Throughout Kimberly's freshman and sophomore years at Colorado College, we stayed close. In retrospect, it was a warm friendship with sex. We saw each other during all her holidays. I looked forward to her visits so much, and she did too, almost as much as I did. When I would ask her about school, she didn't have a lot to say. Sometimes I would get jealous and quiz her about all the guys at school. Finally, once, I may have gotten a little possessive about it. She grabbed my shirt and, with the most serious look I had ever seen from her, said, "I told you there are no other guys. Leave it alone." Then she walked out of the restaurant. For the most part, we got along great. I was envisioning an ideal situation, being with Kimberly and running Specialty Timbers together. It seemed too good to be true, but it looked like it could happen. I was learning so much from Kimberly's dad, Ted. He and I had a good, comfortable relationship. I think he was also happy with my relationship with Kim. I guess he saw me as a bit of an opposite to Mike. Mike was flashy, arrogant, and funny. He was at USC, barely hanging on while partying through his college life. I think he eventually had to have a come-to-Jesus discussion, buckled down, and eventually graduated. On the other hand, I was not flashy. I made up for the lack of flash with hard work and knowledge of the wood products industry. Ted knew Mike was never going to make a career out of Specialty Timbers, while I was looking like a long-term employee and in a serious relationship with his daughter. Ted was definitely on my side in this whole thing. Here's what happened. I proposed to Kimberly before her junior year, and she said she needed to think about it. Halfway through that year, Kim asked for some space. I was heartbroken and threw myself into work. We still talked, and our friendship remained strong, but Kim was trying to find herself. We didn't see much of each other through that junior year, emails and some phone calls, and occasionally I saw her when she came home. We worked together all that summer, but I gave her the space she asked for. Throughout her senior year, our communication fell off. I even went on a few dates, nothing very serious. All of a sudden, she was calling and emailing like in the I need my space times. That summer, she came back, and we got back together. She asked me if my proposal was still an option. I was shocked but happily said it was. We were married that Christmas. I was extremely happy. Ted was very happy, and as I look back on it, I would put Kimberly at medium happy. But at that moment, I was blinded by my dream of the girl, the career, and the father I never had. Life for me was wonderful for a while. Kimberly and I worked together at Specialty Timbers. Business was good, and I was learning a lot. My relationship with Ted was really good and continued to get better. Surprisingly, so did my relationship with my new brother-in-law, Mike. I learned that even though he was a self-absorbed, arrogant little jerk at times, he was fiercely loyal. For whatever reason, he liked me. The first 2 years I thought were great, but cracks started forming in the foundation. The first big crack was our sex life. From once or twice a week throughout our first 2 years, by the beginning of year 3, it was once or twice a month. In retrospect, I could tell she was just not into it. Then Millie moved here. She was a friend of Kimberly's from Colorado. Her name is Mingli, but she went by Millie. Through Ted's contacts, I had bought the house I'm still in, cheap at $125,000. It needed a ton of work, and the bank would not even loan against it. I bought it on contract from Ted's old partner. Actually, the payment was made through Specialty Timbers and deducted from my check. Confusing, but Mike assured me this was the best way to handle the transaction. I got the house habitable, and Kim never complained. There was a small guest cottage at the back with plumbing and electrical. Millie moved in, she was an artist, and the cottage became her studio. Kim seemed to be spending more time in the cottage than at the house. Millie was always sweet to me, and there was no tension. After 6 months, one day Kim tearfully came to me and said she was in love with Millie. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. There was no swearing, no violence, no arguments. I saw black and cried for the first time in almost 20 years. The loss was intense and so sad. I realized I had tied my relationship with Kim to my relationship with her family and my job. My whole life was going to change. For 3 days, I sat at home and did nothing. The darkest of thoughts took up residence in my brain. I was very seriously considering ending my life, and then Mike showed up. He talked, then we talked, and then he listened. He made a phone call, and within 30 minutes, Ted was there. Ted assured me that no matter what happened, I had a home at Specialty Timbers. Mike told his dad that I needed a week off, and Ted agreed. Mike took me on a road trip where we talked, drank, I cried a little, and I thought. On the way back, I began to realize a few things. I was terribly hurt, but I had a job I loved, a boss and ex-father-in-law I truly liked and respected, and finally, a good and loyal friend in Mike. Even Kim and I found a somewhat comfortable friendship. The divorce was easy, she didn't want anything, and I kept my house. Most surprising was how nice and supportive Millie was. There were some difficult times, but I had a good support system of people who genuinely cared. I promised myself that before I ever got close to a woman again, I would protect myself first. On the way home from dropping Celia off, I tried to come to terms with my thoughts. Nothing really happened with meeting those guys. I felt a little disrespected by them and a touch disrespected by Celia. On the other hand, this was just our second date, she had a right to have friends. But there was something about that meeting that told me there was a level of closeness with those guys that didn't fit with the mental image I had of Celia. Maybe I should back off a little. The next day was Sunday, and I had to finish the fireplace and repair some dry rot. After breakfast, I plugged into podcasts and lost myself in the work. For me, the ability to repair and fix this house into the version I wanted was fulfilling. Owning my own home and making it as nice as I knew it could be was particularly satisfying. It was mid-afternoon before I checked my phone. 2 texts, one from Kim checking in and one from Celia. Randy and I are enjoying the weather and having coffee. Thanks for last night. I had to process this. Was I being too sensitive, or should I trust my instincts? I needed to think a little more. Later that afternoon, I sent back a noncommittal text saying, "Have a good time," and that was it. Monday evening, I got another text from her asking how my day was. I waited a few hours and replied, "Good. You?" I got a long text talking about work and a funny story about a dental patient. I didn't reply. Tuesday night, nothing, and I was a bit relieved. Wednesday night she called. I was polite but not terribly enthusiastic. Finally, she asked me what was wrong. I said nothing. Then she asked if I was upset with her. I said no, I had just been busy. She invited me over for dinner on Saturday night. I accepted. Maybe I was being too petty to get upset over something like this. I vowed to put it behind me and see what happened. Dinner on Saturday was nice. She's a good cook, and her condo was nice and well decorated. I began to feel comfortable again and was feeling optimistic. After dinner, we ended up in her bed, and making love to her was fun. I think she had a good first experience too. We made love again that night and showered together in the morning with more action. Celia has a nice athletic body with a beautiful bum and nice-sized breasts. We spent Sunday together, and the intimacy of sex enhanced the progress of our relationship. We went for a run, and this time showered back at my place. I showed her around my reclamation project, and she seemed interested in all the work I was doing. I showed her the old redwood hot tub I had picked up from a project we provided material for and showed her where I was going to put it in the back. Celia was impressed with my carpentry skills and seemed to like my house. For the next few weeks, we saw each other 2 to 3 times a week and spoke or texted daily. In a weak moment, I agreed to go to Evolution with her on Friday night. I can dance a little and don't mind it, but I had a feeling this was not my scene. Celia was so excited that I couldn't help but get caught up in her enthusiasm. Evolution was the hip new club in the warehouse area of Old Town. I had heard of it but had never been there. I told myself that in strong relationships, you need to make sacrifices every so often. I guess this was going to be one of them. We got there a little before 9. Celia seemed to know a lot of people there, employees and other customers. The place was dark with strobe lights flashing and a couple of DJs on elevated platforms. The dance floor was a mass of bodies, all moving to the music, and it was hot inside. We found a spot in the bar, and some guy came over amidst hugs and laughter. It was difficult to talk with all the noise. Celia grabbed my hand and we hit the dance floor. She was good, and I was way out of my league. Pretty soon, we were in the midst of the throng. After a bit, I wasn't sure if it was me or others dancing with Celia. I watched her and could tell she was having a great time. A while later, I shouted to her that I was going to get a beer. She just nodded and smiled. I waited for a moment to see if she was coming with me, but she was caught up in the dance. I stood at the table and occasionally saw flashes of Celia. So far, I had not recognized any of the group we had run into downtown a few weeks ago. Celia came back and had a drink, but I could tell she wanted to keep dancing, so we went back. I was actually having a pretty good time until I recognized a couple of the guys we had met downtown, specifically Marcus. Marcus was a great dancer and maneuvered, so he was really dancing with Celia. I tried to move in and got an elbow. It may have been inadvertent, but I doubt it. This went on for a bit, and finally, I shouted in her ear that I was getting a drink and asked if she wanted one. She just nodded and kept dancing. I made my way to the bar and back to our table. I checked my watch. It was a little after 11. I definitely wanted to get out of there, and I kept waiting for Celia to come back and get her drink. Finally, she came back laughing and smiling with Marcus on her heels. She gave me a sweaty kiss on the cheek and grabbed her drink. She took a sip, and then Marcus grabbed it and chugged the rest. Celia just laughed. "Come on, let's dance," she said, grabbing my hand. "No thanks, I think I'm done," I said. "Just one more?" she asked. Then Marcus stepped in. "Come on, girl, I'll dance with you." They took off. I was pissed, but it got worse. While I was standing and watching, they did all but screw on the dance floor. His hands were all over her, and she looked like she was enjoying it. I was now far beyond pissed. I checked my watch. It was now after midnight. I was done. I was going to give her until 12:30, then I was leaving. I think it was 12:28 when she came back. I grabbed her, and we headed toward the door. I was mad but trying to play it cool. I wasn't going to yell and scream all the way back to her place. She went on about how good a time she had, how great the music was, and how much she liked dancing. The fact that I barely said 2 words didn't seem to register with her. By the time we got to her apartment, she realized where we were. "I thought we were staying at your place tonight," I said. "I'm beat," I said. "How about a different night?" "Okay," she said and looked at me. I smiled, gave her a kiss, and took off without question. It wasn't the way our dates had ended over the past few weeks. The next day, we had no correspondence. I was wrestling with my feelings. I really did like and care for her, but that scene and her enjoyment of it bothered me. And this Marcus, they looked like more than friends. I was busy both Saturday and Sunday, mostly trying to work the Redwood hot tub into a spot on the deck. Sunday night, I saw I had received a text from her, "What's up?" I didn't reply. Monday night, I got another text from her, "Hey, you. I miss talking to you. Call me." I figured I had to answer this one. I texted back, "Sorry, a lot going on. Let's connect tomorrow." "Okay," she said. Tuesday night, I was still struggling with the situation and never replied. Wednesday, I got home from work about 6 o'clock, and in front of my house was her black Volkswagen. Oh, time to face the music, I guess. I found her sitting on my back deck. "What's the deal?" "Are you dumping me?" she asked, looking a little angry. "Look, Celia, I don't know what's going on. I'm struggling with some things right now." "What?" she asked. I went into it, starting with my marriage to Kim and the hurt it caused. Then I admitted the jealousy over her friendship with Marcus and my feelings of disrespect at the nightclub. I laid the whole thing out for her. Why not? I might never see her again. She sat there staring at me, and then the tears started rolling down her cheeks. "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. If it means keeping you, I never have to go to that place again. I want you, and I miss you. I think I may be falling in love with you." I was in shock. I thought this was the end for us, but we just took a left turn and were going in a different direction. "Love," she pledged again that she did not need to hang out with that crowd or go to the dance clubs. I asked her if she was sure, and she said, "Of course. If I had known that bothered you, I never would have asked you to go." We celebrated that night in my bed. The next few months went great. We did lots of things and went on vacation for a week in Hawaii, my first time there, and we loved it. We hung out with my friends and a few of hers, but never with Marcus and that crowd. I never brought his name up. We had been dating for about 8 months, and the holidays were coming up. She was at my place almost every night, and we started discussing living together. We spent the holidays with my family and the Robinsons. She got along great with everyone except Millie. For some reason, there was some distance there. After the first of the year, business ramped up. We were selling into Northern California and the Puget Sound, and with the building boom, our products were in high demand. Ted asked if he and I could get together on Thursday night. "Sure," I said. "What's up?" "We'll talk Thursday," was all he said. Thursday was busy, and before I knew it, it was after 5 o'clock. We met in Ted's office, and I found myself a bit nervous about the formality of the meeting. Ted explained that he was going to be 60 this year and was doing some long-term planning. "Instead of a bonus this year, I'm giving you 9% of specialty timbers," he said. I was shocked. This was not what I was expecting. He continued, "We have opened up NorCal and Western Washington, and that has been successful, as you know. But we are now getting a lot of demand in Colorado and some of the resort areas throughout the Rocky Mountains. I want you to open up those markets. It's going to mean some travel, probably a week a month. Are you up for it? Absolutely, I said. I had seen so little of the country, and getting to travel to these areas was exciting. Being a part owner was also very exciting. I was so happy. He went on to tell me that he owned 51%, Mike and Kim each owned 20%, and I had the remaining 9%. Kim was the CFO, but Mike managed the big picture financial part of the business. I asked Ted if Kim and Mike were okay with me being a part owner. It was their idea, he replied. One other thing on your plate, Smitty is going to retire at the end of the year. Millie's brother, John F., is going to start working in the shop with Smitty. I want you to keep an eye on him too. Will do, I said. I could not wait to tell Celia. I was now an owner, and I was going to start traveling. I was on cloud 9. She was happy about the ownership part but significantly less enthused about my travel. How much will you be gone? She asked. I explained it would normally be a few days once a month. That seemed to make her relax a little. I jumped right into it and was in Denver within 2 weeks. I think my straightforward knowledge of the products and the process helped, and we immediately started getting orders. I had barely scratched the surface when I got my direct deposit for March. I saw I had an extra $1,500 gross in my account. I checked with Kim, and she said, "That's your commission. We pay 3% of gross commission." Didn't he tell you that? I did a little calculation and estimated I could easily sell $500,000 this first year. That was an extra $15,000 per year on top of my regular salary. I was going to be close to 6 figures this year. We planned another Hawaii trip for September, and I was starting to think about proposing to Celia. After the earlier problems, everything was going really well. I was extremely happy at work, and with the extra income from my commissions, I was able to accelerate my work on the house. The house was on a nice-sized lot, all one level, with a guest cottage in the back. It had 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an open kitchen area, a study, and a family room attached to the kitchen. The cottage was a single room with a bathroom and a small kitchenette. I spent a lot of time in the garden. The garden was my oasis, and now with the redwood hot tub, it was spa-like in the back. Celia had dropped her apartment in May and had moved in informally. It was wonderful having her here, and for the most part, all was good. There was some tension when I traveled, but I thought we would get used to it. In August, I asked Mike out for dinner. I had something serious to discuss with him. We met at a bar near his office at 6 p.m. The weather was warm, and we sat outside. "So, what's up, bro?" he asked. "I've decided I'm going to propose to Celia, and I would like you to be the best man." He just stared at me for perhaps a full minute. "Married again? You remember what happened last time. This is different." "I'm different. I was just a kid then, neither Kim nor I knew what we were doing. This is now. I love her and I don't want to be alone." "You sure about her?" "I recall a few bumps not that long ago," he said. We talked about it more, and I did get a few nervous thoughts based on what he said. It was as if he was trying to talk me out of it. I respected Mike's opinion, but he didn't know Celia like I did. "I want you to be my best man," I told him. I was going to propose when we were on Kauai. We celebrated with tequila shots and ended up having a great night. 2 weeks later, I was headed back out to Denver. I needed some samples to show the customers, so that Friday, I went out to the shop. Smitty was not around, so I grabbed my stuff and went to the saw. "What do you need, boss?" John asked. "Fam, I got it." "Thanks though." He quickly came over, grabbed my samples, cut them up, boxed them, and gave them back to me. "Need anything else?" "I can take care of it," he said. "Pretty impressive, young man." "Thanks, John. I appreciate it." "Boss, you need any more help around here?" "My cousin is a good worker." "Good to know, John. And you can call me Cam." "Okay, boss." On my last trip to Colorado, I had cold called a place called Longfellow's. This time, I had a set appointment for Monday at 11 o'clock with Junior Longfellow. I met him at their office outside Denver. He was a guy about my age with a light beard and hair in a ponytail. We hit it off, and our meeting stretched into lunch. Not only did they look like they were going to be a good customer, but I also liked Junior. During our meeting, he mentioned he was doing some tours on the West Coast in November and wanted to visit our operation. These are normally great relationship building opportunities. I told him I had something in Montana for 1 week in November but would get back to him. The trip to Kauai was unbelievable. We were at a nice resort, and the commissions helped with that cost. We hung out by the pool and on the beach, explored the island, went on hikes, snorkeled, and kayaked, active but relaxed all at the same time. We had a lot of sex. We found a secluded beach, and Celia went topless. She looked like a Playboy bunny. I was so turned on. We nearly had sex on the beach, but there were a few people around. We more than made up for it when we got back to the hotel. On the second to last night, we were sitting on our balcony watching the sunset. I gave her the engagement ring and asked her to marry me. She cried, hugged me, and we ended up back in bed. As we were lying there, I asked her if she was happy. She said she was. If you could change anything in our lives, what would it be? I asked. She said, nothing. We were quiet for a minute, and then she added, I guess if there's anything, I wish you didn't travel so much. I told her it should slow down and that it was important for our financial future. Maybe there would be times she could go with me. Okay, she said quietly. I brushed off the comment quickly, perhaps too quickly. Our lives continued, now with wedding planning happening as well. We decided to do it around Valentine's Day. Celia did most of the planning. I was supportive. At work, business continued strong. Our edition of the Rocky Mountain Market increased demand, and we ended up hiring John's cousin Nathan, Gwen, and another of their friends, Van. Knowing Smitty was leaving, I tried to spend some time with John. I saw that he was smart, hardworking, and dedicated. One night, he invited me to get a beer with him, Nathan, and Van. They were all good guys who seemed to like me and were loyal to Specialty. Lots of stuff was happening in our lives, and they all appeared to be good things. I decided to hire a contractor to remodel the kitchen. It was a guy I knew who bought from us. I could do it myself, but it would take months and I didn't want to tear that essential part of the house up for so long. Celia was involved with the design process, and though we didn't agree on everything, her contributions were helpful. Towards the end of October, I had to go back on the road. Celia was unhappy about it and started to pressure me about a 2 or 3 day trip rather than 5. There was no way I could do it in less than 5. My November trip coincided with the week Junior was going to be in town for the tours. I would miss it, but Ted said he would be glad to show Junior our operation. I had a trade show with a customer in Montana, and it was going to give me a good opportunity to showcase our products to this market. The show set up on Friday morning and started Friday evening, then continued all day Saturday. I had a flight out early from Billings Sunday morning. On Friday, the show was busy. There was a cocktail party at 8 p.m., and I had a number of promising conversations. Every night when I traveled, I also called Celia to check in. This Friday, I made it up to my room a little before 10 o'clock and called. No answer. Maybe she went to bed or was in the shower. I called again at 10:30. No answer again. I figured she was asleep. The show started Saturday at 10 o'clock. I slept till 7 o'clock, got up, worked out at the hotel gym, and called Celia about 8:15. Still no answer. After a quick shower, I saw I had missed a call from her. I called her back. Hey, we keep missing each other. How are you? Fine, she said, sounding a little out of it, not the enthusiasm I expected. I called you a couple of times. Did you go to bed early? No, I had the phone on mute. I was just puttering around, working in the kitchen, she replied. Did they get the tile finished? We then talked about the kitchen remodel, completely dismissing the fact that she didn't answer the phone the night before. Monday was the week of Thanksgiving, and we would be celebrating with the Robinsons. Celia was a little off all week, quiet and a bit withdrawn. Maybe the holidays stressed her out. I didn't say anything about her mood. I got an invitation from Longfellows, our new customer in Denver, to attend their Christmas party on December 9th, which was a Thursday night. We talked about Celia coming with me, but I had other business, and she had to work, so I went alone. They had decorated their warehouse area for the holidays. I knew there would be drinking, so I Ubered from my hotel. It was fun, and later in the evening, I was talking to Junior about our trip to Hawaii. I was showing him some pictures, and he saw one of Celia. "Let me see that again." "This is your fiancée?" he asked. "Yes, she is," I said proudly. He handed me back the phone, then grabbed it again and stared at it closely, with a serious look on his face. "What's up?" I asked. "Does she know someone named Brandy?" he asked. I looked at him and said, "Why?" I could be wrong, but I thought I saw her and some chick named Brandy at a dance club last month when I was out in your town. I've got to tell you, as a friend, they were not acting like they were engaged. This was when I had been in Montana. I was starting to get pissed and embarrassed. I asked him to tell me what he knew. Friday night, after touring the mill, I went with another guy to a dance club called Dust. It was what you might expect, loud, dark, etc. At one point, Sean, the guy I was with, was dancing with this Brandy. He said he could have taken her back to the hotel if he wanted, but later, her and your woman were with these other guys. I don't remember all their names, but they looked like trouble. Do you remember someone named Marcus? I asked. Yeah, that was one of them. He was friendly with your lady, Junior said. Look, man, you're a friend. I like you, Cam. As much as it hurts, I'd want someone to tell me if this happened to me. I know, I said. I appreciate it. I should probably go. Thanks for the party and the info. I got a big hug from Junior and left. I was steaming, but I had to think about this. Number 1, she told me no more dance clubs. This made me mad. And number 2, what was with the relationship with Marcus? She was lying to me, I just didn't know how much. I didn't sleep much that night, and my flight home was delayed. Celia had texted me a couple of times, but I had yet to reply. Finally, as I was boarding, she called, and I answered. When will you be home? My flight is late, and I won't be home till 6 o'clock tonight. Oh, too bad. I love you, and I miss you, she said. I'll see you tonight, I said and hung up. After finally landing in on the way home, I decided my plan was to see if she would lie to me. I gave her a hug and a kiss when I got home and inspected the progress of the kitchen. I've got a question for you, I said. Sure, honey, what is it? When I was stuck in Montana at the show last month, what did you do that Friday night? She looked away and said, nothing. Just hung out here. You have one last chance to think through that answer. Where were you? I asked calmly but coldly. She then burst into tears and ran to the bedroom. I sat and waited. I was angry and sad. I just waited. 2 hours later, she came out and told me this tale. She had talked to Brandy the day before, and Brandy said they had to see this new club called Dust. Brandy knew I was out of town and said that all they were going to do was check it out. They ended up staying there late and dancing. And then what? I asked. Then I came home alone. Of course, alone. Was Brandy with you? No, she hooked up with an old boyfriend, I think. So you came home by yourself? Yes, she said. Who was at the club? Anyone I would know? Not really. I don't know, she replied. You can imagine how the rest of the conversation went. It was like pulling teeth to get hard information out of her. What I finally found out was that they went to the club, ran into some friends, and danced a bit. Later, Marcus and his crowd showed up, and they hung out with them for a while. She claimed she left about midnight. Have you ever had sex with Marcus? I asked. Absolutely not, she answered. Does he want to have sex with you? I asked. I don't know. Well, maybe. Probably. But he's just a friend. You are the only one I want to be with, she wailed. I told her I needed to think about this and that she should stay in the cottage. Sobbing, she grabbed her things and headed to the cottage. The timing could not have been worse. We were in the midst of wedding planning, the holidays were around the corner, and my entire future was up in the air. I needed some advice and called Mike. He suggested I come over on Friday night. Meanwhile, this week with Celia had been very uncomfortable. She was either crying or apologizing. I was upset. I loved her, but at this point, I did not trust her. Can there be love without trust? I met Mike and Megan at their sleek new home in the South Hills. I gave them the whole story and asked them what they thought. Mike was of the opinion that if you cannot trust someone, you shouldn't marry them. Hard to argue with that. Megan said, I feel a little responsible for introducing you too, and I don't know Celia all that well, but I do think she is a nice person, not a bad one. I also know she is deeply in love with you. Ultimately, you either have to believe in them or not. That is something only you can decide. That night, I went home and asked Celia to come up to the house. We made small talk for a few minutes. I could tell she was nervous. I had a couple of questions for her and told her she needed to be absolutely honest. She agreed. I asked if she felt like the whole club scene was important to her. I asked exactly what happened the night she and Brandy went to dust, and I asked her about the true nature of her relationship with Marcus. She told me that no, the clubs were not important. Brandy got her at a weak moment. She was bored and lonely and just wanted to have fun. Yes, Marcus was hitting on her, but she was not interested in him like that. Yes, the attention from those guys made her feel good, but she had never done anything other than being groped a few times on the dance floor. I thought about that, and what she said sounded sincere and consistent with my impressions of her. I told her this was a good first step. She asked if she could stay in her bed that night, and I agreed. I had no intention of having sex with her, but I was unsuccessful with that intention. Though the holidays, the wedding, and life went on, my radar was up a little, and I watched closely. Nothing made me think anything was wrong. Celia was loving and affectionate. For my January trip, she took the week off from work, went with me, and we spent the weekend in snowy Boulder. We had a great time. The whole dust incident was fading from memory. We were married in February, and it was a wonderful event. I met her mom and several members of her family. There were less than 100 people in total, family, the Robinsons, and some close friends. None of her pals from the dance club, except Brandy, attended. We honeymooned on St. Martin in the Caribbean. It was different from Hawaii. The ocean was warmer, with fewer waves and a beautiful blue color. You could tell there was a heavy European influence, especially at the clothing-optional beaches. Celia went topless and kept the minimum covered below the waist. We had every kind of sex at least daily for the entire honeymoon, without question, my best vacation ever. For the next 2 years, things went along very well. I sometimes thought back to that December and the fact that I almost canceled the wedding and marriage. I was glad I hadn't. I blocked out any seeds of doubt and thought positive thoughts. We kept working on the house, and it was becoming a real neighborhood showpiece. I was proud. Business continued to be good, and we even considered opening up other markets. However, with our current people in operation, we were at capacity. I began a good friendship with John Pham. He was a great employee and a good guy. He knew our operations and machinery. He was the last one to leave the shop at night. Once every few weeks, John, Van, Nathan, and I would sit in the shop after hours, with the smell of cedar and sawdust, and drink a 6-pack. Our talk was casual, about the business and life. I enjoyed their company, and I think they liked me. Just as things seemed fairly stable, a new competitor out of Asia started importing to the U.S. We first heard about them in Southern California, but we knew we would see them in our market soon. It was an engineered product that looked close to some of our products but was at least 30% less expensive. We started seeing sales slipping. We had been on a steady increase and had invested in resources to meet the demand, and now, for the first time ever, sales were going the other way. Ted, Kimberly, and I met to discuss our strategy with the new competition. Ted felt that the best thing to do was to get in front of our customers and review the differences in the quality of our products. This would mean more travel, and I'm afraid I'm going to need you, Cam, to cover our NorCal market as well as the mountain market. I knew Ted was right and I needed to do this, but I was stressed out. That night, when I got home, I talked to Celia about business and what I was going to need to do. How long is this going to take? She asked. I don't know. It will certainly be months. Months, she exploded. You're telling me you will be gone 2 weeks per month for months? Yes, I told her. And I could not make any promises. She fumed. Now, not only was I stressed out about work, but I was also getting no support from Celia. We had some good moments, but over the next 6 months, our relationship suffered. The closeness we had was rarely there. I felt like I was fighting a battle in the marketplace as well as a battle at home. After 6 months of my traveling and her not understanding, our marriage was at an all-time low. I had to travel for the business. The travel was helping, and business was steady, but it took consistent effort. She didn't understand. I left on Monday to head to the Bay Area. The weekend had been rough, no closeness, no good conversations, and no sex. I started to feel guilty about the travel and called her on Tuesday, suggesting we needed a night out when I got back. She seemed a little more energetic about things, and I thought maybe our relationship would start getting better. Friday night, we Ubered to Tomlin and Bistro in Old Town. Celia was affectionate, the conversation was good, and she even asked me about business. We had a great dinner, a nice bottle of wine, and a couple of after-dinner drinks. I thought sex tonight would be great. I called an Uber, and we waited outside the restaurant for our ride. I went inside to use the restroom, and when I came back outside, I saw Marcus, Bobby, and their crowd hovering around Celia. She was smiling and laughing, and Marcus had his arm around her waist. I walked over, grabbed his wrist to remove his hand, and he flinched, kind of clipped my jaw. I shoved him, and the next thing I knew, I was on the ground. One of them had cold-cocked me, and I'd blacked out for a second. When I came to, Celia was helping Marcus up, then she apologized to them. I was groggy, but I knew what I saw. Then she walked over to me and started yelling, blaming me for the incident. They took off when someone from the restaurant came out to check on things. I was still on my hands and knees with my eyes swelling shut. Just then, the Uber showed up. We both got in. I was still dazed, and she just lit into me. Why did I have to ruin things? Why did I knock Marcus down? What was I thinking, grabbing his hand? It's my body. What were you doing attacking my friends? I didn't say a word. I didn't trust myself. I was so angry at her in the situation, stressed out at work, stressed out about my marriage, and she was showing far more loyalty to Marcus than her husband. The moment we got into the house, she went to the kitchen to get me an ice pack. She had no idea how mad I was. Get your bum away from me. I roared. It shocked her. She just stood and looked at me. Get your bum out of here. You can stay in the cottage. What is your problem tonight? She lashed back. Tonight? I thundered. My problem is you. Every night, no support, no affection, just whining because I'm trying to earn a living for us. She walked to the bedroom, grabbed her stuff, and headed out the back way towards the cottage without a word. I definitely needed the space and was relieved when she left. I sat at the table and had a brandy. On my second one, I calmed down and took stock of my life. I loved my job, and even with the challenges, it was a career I loved. My relationship with the Robinsons was good. Ted was a mentor and a friend. Kim and I had always been friends despite the failed marriage, and Mike was my best friend. I loved my house and was steadily transitioning it into my idea of a perfect home. Perhaps because growing up, housing was never quite secure for my family, having my own place was extra important. I started feeling better and decided that tomorrow Celia and I would talk and maybe even think about counseling. I gave her a little time. At 9 a.m., I walked up to the cottage with a tray of coffee, juice, and fruit. I opened the door, and no one was there. Her stuff wasn't here, and she clearly had not spent the night. Okay, now what? I puttered around the backyard for an hour or so and called her, straight to voicemail. Mid-afternoon, I called again, voicemail. I worked around the house, tried a few more times, and then I called Kimberly. She invited me over for dinner, and she, Millie, and I discussed my situation. Kim said we had both made mistakes, but Millie was firmly in my corner. We discussed all options, including divorce. I was in town this week, and after a half dozen more calls and no reply by Tuesday, the ball was in her court. Friday midday, she called. She was staying with friends and wanted to come by and get some of her stuff. She came by at 6 o'clock that evening. I wanted to talk, but she said not yet. I asked where she was staying, and she said with friends. I asked who, and she said just some friends. I told her I was gone next week through the weekend at another trade show and that I would like to talk with her when I got back. She nodded. Okay. She took off in some vehicle I did not recognize with dark-tinted windows. I couldn't tell who was driving. I decided to fly out Sunday night for Denver so I could hit the ground running on Monday morning. My sales pitch to my customers was quality service and the relationship we had established, compared to the cheaper prices of the Asian competitor. We were actually keeping a good percentage of our business, particularly when material defects started appearing from the Asian products. I had dinner Tuesday night with Junior Longfellow. He and I were close enough that I told him the whole story about my situation. You know, he said, we don't really need you at the show this weekend. We were co-sponsoring a booth with Longfellow at the trade show. The show will be slow, and if anything, I probably have too many people scheduled there anyway. I think you need to get back and take care of business at home. My first reaction was to protest, but I decided to take him up on it. I got an early flight for Friday morning that got me home before 9 a.m. The rest of my week in Colorado went well. I was feeling optimistic about things, though I knew Celia and I had a lot to work on. I drove straight home from the airport, and as I unlocked the door, I immediately could tell something was wrong. The house was trashed. Had I been burglarized? The closer I looked, the more it seemed like a party had happened. Empty alcohol bottles were all over the place, trash and unwashed dishes were scattered, there was a burn mark on my refinished hardwood, and a huge dark stain on my couch. I checked everything out, there was no one in the house, but it looked like the guest room bed had been used. Celia, would she do this? I thought she loved the house as much as I did. I wandered outside, and the backyard looked fine, but I did see a few cigarette butts on the ground. I went to the cottage and opened the door to find Celia and Marcus asleep in the bed. What the hell is going on? I demanded. She jumped up. You weren't supposed to be home until tomorrow, she said. She was nude and, for whatever reason, covering herself up in front of me. Meanwhile, Marcus casually rolled over and stared at me with a smirk on his face. Get the hell out of here, asshole. I bellowed at him. Chill, man, I'll be leaving. But you understand the lady here owns half this house, Marcus said. You've got 2 minutes to get the hell out of here. I shouted. We are married, and it's my house too, she chimed in. I was seething mad, and I knew if I didn't leave these two, something very bad would happen. 2 minutes, I said, and I left. Back in the main house, I called Mike and explained what had happened. He was calm and said he would make some calls to divorce attorneys for me and set something up. Divorce, at this point, seemed like the only option. I called Kim at work and gave her a brief version of the story. She said that she and Millie would come over that night. I ordered new door locks from the hardware store. I was so wound up, I started cleaning up the mess in my house. Mike called back and had a meeting set up for Monday at 11 a.m. with a divorce attorney he was referred to. His name was Darren King. I checked out his profile, ex-military JAG, originally from Texas. His picture showed dark hair, a strong jawline, and a very no-nonsense appearance. Good. I checked the cottage, and they were gone. It was a mess too, with what appeared to be evidence of drug use. I got the locks and installed them. By then, it was dinner time, and Kim and Millie showed up. They got the whole story, and even Kim agreed there was no way to save this relationship. I was more angry than sad at this point. I met with Darren King, and he was just as he appeared, firm handshake, looked me straight in the eye. He explained that even though she committed adultery, it would not be a factor in the divorce settlement. He asked about my assets, and I told him about the house, my bank and retirement accounts, and my 9% ownership of Specialty Timbers. He said it was likely that things would be split 50-50 and advised me to prepare for that outcome. He said he would put the papers together, and I could have her served by the end of the week. After I left, I was in shock. My marriage was over, she would get half the value of the house and half of my equity in Specialty Timbers. The solidity of my entire life was being threatened. I was starting to get depressed. I called Mike to explain what was happening. After I explained what Darren King had told me about the 50-50 split, Mike said, "Don't worry about that for now. Just take care of yourself. I may be able to help." I felt a little better after talking to Mike, but what could Mike do? The law was the law. I went into work, mostly because I didn't want to be by myself, and tried to lose myself in the familiarity of helping run the business. It seemed that both Ted and Kim had talked to Mike. They were both encouraging about what the outcome might be. I wasn't nearly as optimistic. Even John Nathan and the warehouse guys were supportive. John walked up to me and said, "Boss, we've got your back. Don't worry." I truly appreciated their friendship. I had divorce papers served to her at her work on Friday. I immediately got a text from her saying, "Asshole, you had to send them to my work. I want half of everything." I called Mike, who had me contact Darren. Darren told me to cease any communication with her. If she hired a lawyer, I was to contact Darren, and then it would all be handled between the lawyers. I couldn't help but worry about my house and my shares in Specialty Timbers. I was upset and called Mike about it. He said, "I know you're worried, but I'm working on a few things for you. Have I ever let you down before?" He hadn't, but I asked him, "What exactly are you working on?" "Can't say yet." "Have faith." The weeks went on, and my life settled into work pretty exclusively. I didn't even want to work on the house. She might get it. I functioned with a dark cloud. My assets were being attacked, and my wife was gone. I spent this time wondering what had happened. I knew I was gone a lot, but I thought she understood this was for our future. I had learned in life that you make short-term sacrifices for long-term gain. I knew she was a bit of a flirt and liked to get attention from men. That whole dance club scene showed that. I was sad, nervous, and angry, all rolled into one. If there was any good news, it was that business had rebounded, and we had started making some plans to go after the Southern California and potentially Texas markets. We had inquiries about our products from these areas. One night, as I was getting home, I saw what I thought was the same dark-tinted window car that Celia had been in. It lingered at the curb by my house and then pulled away as I drove up. They certainly knew where I lived. The following Tuesday, I got a call from Darren King saying that he had received correspondence from Celia's attorney. They were asking for half of my equity in Specialty Timbers, 50% of my bank account and investments, in the house. I exploded. "No way," I said. Darren told me to calm down. They could ask for anything they wanted. He was working with Mike on something related to my finances, and we might have a surprise for them. 2 more weeks went by, and one night, John Nathan, Van, and I went out for beers in Old Town. As we were sitting inside the Z Bar, a couple of Marcus's guys walked by and gave me the eye before quickly hurrying off. I looked over, and John was just staring at them. "Those the a-holes, boss?" John asked. "Yes," I told him. The 3 of them started talking in Vietnamese. "What's that about?" I asked. "No worries, boss. We've got your back," John replied. The next day, Darren called me and said we had a preliminary and potential settlement conference next Wednesday at his office. "What do I need to do? How can I help?" I asked. "Just be here at 3 p.m., he told me. I called Mike and told him what was going on. "Yeah, I know. We'll be there too." "We?" I asked. "Like I told you, have faith. This may work out okay for all of us," he said before hanging up. I was mystified but slightly encouraged. I arrived early on Wednesday, and Darren's secretary took me to a back office. After a few minutes, I was ushered into the conference room. On our side of the table were Darren, Mike, a man I did not know, and me. On the other side were Celia's attorney, Rick Blassingame, Celia, still looking good, and, to my disbelief, Marcus, who was sitting and smirking. There were no handshakes and no small talk. Darren started, "All right, Mr. Blassingame, it's your meeting. Go ahead." "If I may," Blassingame started, "Mrs. Joseph is just after what is rightfully due her after your client threw her out of their marital home." "Go on," Darren said, staring directly at him. "Here is a fair and accurate accounting of the marital assets," Blasingame said, handing us all a paper. It read, A. 9% of Specialty Timber LLC, 1/2 valued at $360,000. B. 50% of the residence on Ravens Crest Drive, 1/2 valued at $325,000. C. 50% of Mr. Joseph's retirement account valued at $63,000. D. 50% of their joint checking and savings accounts, valued at $119,000. E. Miscellaneous pieces of furniture and other household items. At this point, the man I didn't know opened his briefcase and brought out some documents. "Mr. Blasingame, allow me to introduce myself to you and your client. My name is Aaron Devier. I'm an attorney with a doctorate in corporate law. I have several documents that you may find interesting," he said, handing legal-looking papers to Celia N. Blasingame. Number 1. Mr. Joseph does not own the house on Ravens Crest Drive. It is an asset owned by Specialty Timbers LLC. "But he's an owner of the company," sputtered Blasingame. "No, he's not," interrupted Aaron. "According to their corporate bylaws, a majority can nominate for ownership, and in unusual cases where it may harm the company, the majority can rescind shares. If you turn to the 3rd page of the annual meeting minutes, the majority owners rescinded Mr. Joseph's shares before the divorce decree was served." At this point, Marcus yelled, "This is half of that is yours." Celia was crying, and Blasingame was clearly over his head. "Whoever you are," Darren said with a steely eye, "anything more out of you and you will be removed. In fact, I will do it myself." Marcus bolted from the room, slamming the door. Celia continued to cry, and there was silence in the room. "Mr. Blasingame," Darren said, "Mr. Devier has examined all the records and had them certified and endorsed by the Attorney General's Office of the State of Oregon. You are welcome to try to take this to a higher court, but a piece of advice: it will be expensive for your client. Mr. Devier has been a consulting attorney on matters of far more sophisticated corporate law than this. He is also, as a favor to his fraternity brother Michael Robinson, consulting pro bono on Mr. Joseph's behalf." I was in just as much shock as Celia and Blasingame. Darren opened a file folder and pulled out a check. "Here's a cashier's check for $25,000. Mr. Blasingame, this is our final offer. Would you like a few moments to consult with your client?" "Yes, I would," said Blasingame. We left and went to Darren's office. I was hugging Mike and Darren, and when I went to hug Aaron Devier, he held out a hand and said, "A handshake will do." I laughed and shook his hand. "Thank you, all of you. But do I not own my house?" Mike smiled and said, "Don't worry, the house is yours. When my old man did that contract with Terry Peterson to buy the house, Peterson wouldn't sell it to you because he was worried you might not keep up with the payments. So, the old man was making the payments, and you were paying him. I got to thinking about that, and Aaron took a look at the deal. Today, that house belongs to Specialty Timbers. Once this is all settled, we'll get it legally in your name. What about my shares of the company?" I asked. "Do I still own 9%? "No, as a matter of fact, you don't," Aaron said. "Once this is all settled, you will own 14%. I've bequeathed you 5% of my ownership. In all honesty, you deserve it. The company is doing well, and you are a big part of that." At that moment, Darren's secretary came in and told us that Blasingame was ready to talk. We went back to the conference room and took our spots. Darren began, "All right, Mr. Blasingame, what have you and your client decided?" "Well, Mr. King, it's not that simple. Though Mr. Joseph does not own the house, Mrs. Joseph spent many hours repairing and working on it. Furthermore, while Mr. Joseph was on his many travels, it was Mrs. Joseph who maintained the house," Blasingame said. Darren interrupted, "Go on." Blasingame continued, "We believe $50,000 is far more in line with what Mrs. Joseph at a minimum deserves." At that, Darren shut the file folder, stuffed it back in his briefcase, stood up, and said, "See you in court." Mike and Aaron Devier also stood. Wait, we'll take the $25,000, sputtered Blasingame. Darren pulled out the divorce decree, and both Celia and I signed the agreement. I was free with very little cost. As Celia and Blasingame filed out, Mike said loudly enough for all to hear, $25,000, nice job. We would have gone up to $75,000. All I heard from Celia was a single SOB, and that was it. That was a little rough, Robbie, Aaron said. Mike replied, not rough enough, my friend. We celebrated at a bar, and I happily bought drinks. I was so thankful for the legal advice and especially thankful that Mike Robinson was my friend. Friday was a long day at work but a good day. Business was good. I felt great about all the support I got from Ted, Kim, Mike, John, and the guys in the warehouse. I just felt good to be part of a good group of people. I was still mad at Celia, but more than anything, I was turning sad about the relationship. If just a couple of things had gone differently, I believe we could have been happy. But I also wondered, should a strong relationship be that fragile? Hard to say. Little did I know, as I was leaving work, a dark car with tinted windows began to follow me. I was oblivious, just glad to be heading back to my house. I went immediately to the back deck for my after-work beer. I sat there, closed my eyes, and just exhaled. That was when I first heard them. There were 3 of them, and Marcus had a knife. Well, look what we have here. What do you want, Marcus? I said, scared. What I want is a piece of you, a few fingers, maybe a hand, or maybe something else, Marcus said. I looked around for an escape route, and just then, the other 2 guys grabbed me. This is going to be fun, Marcus chuckled. At that moment, I heard a commotion from back by the cottage. Within seconds, John, Nathan, Van, and 3 of their friends all appeared in my yard. You need any help, boss? John asked. As a matter of fact, John, the first do, can you help show these guys the way out? Marcus started backing away, and his guys took off. John's guys grabbed them, and JN grabbed Marcus. We're going to have a discussion, mister, he said to Marcus as he escorted him out of the yard. About an hour later, John came back by himself. I thanked him and asked how he knew they were here. I looked out the warehouse door and saw the black car follow you. I'd seen those guys before, bad guys, John explained. Well, thank you. How can I repay you? I asked. Repay? Repay what? You know, repay, we're friends, John replied. I was moved to near tears. Boss, I guarantee those guys won't come back. I didn't want to know. Flash forward 5 years, business has its ups and downs, but for us, mostly UPS. I have a new guy working with us. Though he did not know the lumber business, he is smart, hardworking, and a good learner. I have him working in ops with John and the guys. His name is Chase Devier, yes, a cousin of mine. The fraternity brother Aaron who helped me so much all those years ago seems Chase was not interested in college and needed a job. At first, I thought I was repaying a favor, but he's working well for us. Ted still comes in every day, but I think he mostly reads the newspaper and talks to old friends. Kimberly is really running the place, and I help out. I spend a lot of time on the road, but now that we are established, not nearly as much. My love life has improved too. Through my friendship with John and Nathan, I met Van's sister, Jelly. Yes, that's her name. I asked her why she was named that, and she told me, when my mom had me and I came out, she said, that's Jelly. She is cute. She is a fitness instructor at the Valley Club and is in very good shape. I'm almost 10 years older than her, but she doesn't seem to mind. She also doesn't seem to mind that I'm not eager to get married again. She says to me, you look at other women, and I kick your bum. Then I kick mine. I just smile and laugh. Did I ever run into Celia again? No, I never saw her again, and to be honest, I don't even think of her much. I did see Marcus once, walking towards me on the street. He saw me and crossed to the other side. I am forever grateful for the people in my life, Ted, Kim, Millie, John, Fam, Nathan, Van, and of course Jelly. But most of all, I'm grateful for Mike. I love my home and I love my company. I'm a very lucky man. The roar of a lawnmower and edger both running at the same time rudely disturbed my Saturday morning sleep. A moan from the other side of the bed indicated that I wasn't the only one being annoyed. Darla sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. She sort of stretched and yawned at the same time. "Sorry, Brian. I totally forgot the boys wanted to get an early start on the yard work so that everything would be ready for this afternoon." As she walked to the bathroom, she tossed her dirty blonde hair to work out the knots and rats from sleeping on it. Her bum wiggled provocatively through the thin cotton nightgown. After 20 years, she still looked good. Today was my birthday. It was tradition to have a barbecue and invite the whole world. Well, it wasn't that bad, just family, friends, and neighbors for a birthday party. It was a little overdone. We had to borrow a few grills and smokers to handle everything. Even though it was my day, I always felt obligated to do most of the cooking. I wasn't that good at it, but it turned out to be, as expected. The best thing about it was that the cook always had a cold beer in his left hand. I had to keep the right hand free to work the meat. "Would you like your birthday present now, or do you want to wait until tonight? The shower is warm and ready." Darla was grinning as she looked around the bathroom doorway. The nightgown was gone, and she was playing at being coy. "I'll see you tonight, little lady. Right now, I'm going to go down and help the boys. I'll shower later." Todd was 18 and would be leaving for Texas A&M in 2 months. Terry was a year younger and already had a scholarship locked in at Auburn. They were good sons, and I gave Darla all the credit for raising them right. About the only things I directly gave them were a comfortable house and a good work ethic. I always regretted not being a better, more involved father. We worked the yard and the patio area over pretty well for a couple of hours and then fired up some of the grills. I wanted to get the ribs started on the smokers first. Hamburgers, hot dogs, and steaks could be done as needed, but the ribs had to be pampered. Todd got the smokers started up while Terry smeared the dry rub all over the meat. Hell, the way things were going, I could probably sit back and let them take care of everything this year. Darla arrived just as we finished all our prep work. Her 2 sisters were coming over to help her with all the extras. There would be over 50 people to feed today. It's funny how friends show up when there's free food. I was 40 years old but still felt like 20, and next month Darla and I would celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary. It was a good marriage. The sex wasn't as hot as it had been during the earlier years, but it was still great. It seemed to drop off about a year ago, shortly after Darla started work. The fear of an empty nest pushed her out of the house. I was happy if she was happy. We didn't need the money, but she needed the social interactions. The boys and I hit the showers. I had a new shirt just for the occasion that my mother had dropped off earlier in the week. It wasn't exactly my style, but I was obligated to wear it. I looked like a Hawaiian pimp. Darla wisely insisted that I wear an apron. Of course, I had a nice one that said "Don't kiss the cook." It wasn't long until our guests started dribbling in. Some brought dishes of food, some brought presents, and some brought liquid refreshments. The weather was perfect, and it was going to be a beautiful day. Darla looked great and, as usual, was the perfect hostess. Next year she would be 40 but could pass for 30 with no problem. She kept her figure and her look. I was looking forward to a few exotic weekends and vacations after the boys left. I watched as she flitted around the tables, making sure that everything was perfect, the ideal wife and the ideal mother. What more could a man want? At last, the anxious mob started to feed. Plates of food suddenly appeared and disappeared all around the yard. Most of the guests brought their own lawn furniture, which made things easier. The beer was in one wash tub and the sodas in another. I knew that the cake was safe in the kitchen, waiting for its time of glory. I don't know where he came from, and I definitely didn't recognize him. He was tall and wore a dark blue jacket. He stopped at the fringe of the party area and leaned over, saying something to one of the neighbors. She pointed towards Darla. He thanked her and walked our way. Darla noticed his approach and seemed a little uncomfortable. I said nothing as he walked past me. Darla Connor, my wife, nodded and said yes. He handed her an envelope that he had removed from inside his jacket. Darla Connor, you were served. That was it. He turned and walked away as quietly as he had arrived. By this time, everyone at the party was watching. Darla stood there without moving. There was no emotion on her face. She glanced at me and slowly turned and went back into the house. I watched and said nothing. The normal chattering of the guests had turned into hushed mumblings and whispers. In a desperate effort to break the spell of the moment, I shouted out, "Do anybody want more ribs? Come and get them." Todd and Terry wandered over to my side. "What the hell is going on, Dad?" Terry asked, trying to be discreet. All I could do was shrug my shoulders. Todd started to go into the house, and I touched his arm. He stopped when I shook my head to indicate no. "Why don't you guys check to see if we need any more beer or drinks?" I suggested. As the conversation around the yard started to return to normal, I relaxed a little. After 10 minutes, I decided it was time to confront my wife. I didn't get the chance. "Dad, Mom is leaving with the Mustang." Terry pointed toward the front of the house. My black Mustang convertible was racing down the street faster than it should have been. The backyard went quiet again as everyone watched her speed away. Darla normally drove the minivan, but it was parked. The Mustang was handy. There were a lot of unanswered questions, but I guessed they would have to wait until my wife got home. Things went downhill after that. Darla's sister Peggy brought the cake out, and I made a half-hearted attempt to look happy. Without Darla, there seemed to be a cloud over everything. The friends and neighbors left first. The family stayed a little longer, but eventually, there was nothing else left to put away or wash. Amazingly, Darla's sudden departure was not a topic of conversation. There was a definite effort on everyone's part to avoid any mention of it. I was alone with my two sons, and the house was quiet. They both looked at me for some kind of sign or explanation. I had none to offer. I sat on the sofa alone as they went to bed. I was still there in the morning. Todd and Terry were up early and started the day by returning the grills and other paraphernalia to the neighbors. The smell of fresh coffee got me off the couch. Darla had not returned. Whatever was in that envelope must have been pretty important. I tried her cell phone several times, but it was turned off. Of course, I was awake half the night trying to figure out what was going on. The boys finished returning everything and took off. They had no trouble figuring out that I wanted to be alone. A long hot shower helped, but not much. There wasn't much of anything I could do on a Sunday. Tomorrow, I could see if the police could help in any way. I didn't know any cops or detectives, but I had a few friends in the courthouse. Hopefully, they might be able to help. We had one credit card and one debit card. The debit card was used for day-to-day stuff, and the credit card was used for larger purchases. We paid both of them off monthly. If Darla were in trouble, she would need to use them. It took a couple of days for the credit card purchases to show up on the bank account, but the debit charges were usually posted in a couple of hours. I checked the credit card activity first and found nothing. The debit card was another story. About 2 hours after Darla left the house, she bought gas at the Pennsylvania and Ohio state line. 2 hours later, she got some in Illinois. The last transaction was an ATM in Cedar Rapids, where she withdrew $300. I was on my third cup of coffee when I realized that she was not coming back. She was not just killing time, she was running away. I loved my wife, and I didn't want to do anything to hurt her, but I also didn't want to encourage her in whatever she was doing. Even though it was a Sunday, I was able to cancel both cards in 10 minutes. About an hour later, I called the police department and reported my Mustang stolen. I didn't tell them my wife took it. I explained that there was a gas card in the car and that it had been used in 3 states headed west. I felt bad about lying to the police, but I thought it was the only way to get any attention. It was weak, but they seemed more interested in getting rid of me than in questioning me about the circumstances. I did a quick inventory of the house, and the only things that seemed to be missing were her purse and a small overnight bag. I had no idea what she packed in it. For several hours, I debated with myself about what to do with her cell phone. Since I canceled the cards, I was hoping it would force her to call home and explain things. I never got around to eating lunch. Before I knew it, it was supper time, and my son showed up with a couple of pizzas. There was a ton of food left from the day before, but I have to admit the hot slices tasted good. We finally got around to talking about what had happened. I briefed them on what I knew, and they offered support. I slept in my bed that night. Darla never called. Todd and Terry were working over the summer for a local tree trimming company. It was hard work, but they seemed up to it and enjoyed the macho image that came along with the job. I waved to them from the porch as the Jeep moved down the street. After finishing my coffee, I wandered back into the empty house, still trying to figure out what went wrong. I called work and took a week's vacation. I was getting a little sick of the job, but it paid well. I delivered gravel for one of the local rock quarries. It was hot and dirty, but it didn't require a lot of decision-making. I just picked up the loads, dropped them off, and collected my paycheck. Right after Darla started work at Prescott Casualty Company, we attended several company functions. They had parties and picnics where I met some of the folks she worked with. I realized that during the last 6 months or so, we were no longer attending any gatherings. In fact, she never even mentioned them. They were important to her when she started with the company, and then all of a sudden, they were not. I'm not very good at remembering people I meet, but I did recall Bob and Margie Gilson. Bob was a carpenter, and Margie worked in the same office as Darla. A phone call to Prescott Casualty seemed to be in order. "Margie, this is Brian Connor. Do you have a minute to talk?" "Hi, Brian. I'm pretty busy right now. I hope it isn't anything important. Darla didn't show up for work today, did she?" "No, we didn't really expect her to." "Oh, really? Why is that?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. It was obvious that Margie was not comfortable talking to me. "Brian, I don't think I want to discuss any of this with you. I think you should talk to your wife." "I would be glad to, except I have no idea where she is." There was another long pause. "Brian, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of work to do. I have to go." Before I had a chance to say anything else, she hung up. All of a sudden, I got the feeling that something was going on at Prescott Casualty that Darla did not want me to know about. That explains why we were no longer attending any company functions. She was afraid that somebody would accidentally say or do something that might give her away or lead me to believe she was up to no good. I grabbed a cold beer and went out on the porch to think. There were a few things that I had noticed over the past few months, but didn't give much thought to. Darla had started working overtime a few nights a week, not enough to wave a red flag, but it had become a regular thing. She stopped talking about work when she was at home, and then there was our avoidance of socializing with anybody from the company. On the other hand, she hadn't changed her appearance or dress. She hadn't bought any new clothing or fancy underwear. There were no suspicious phone calls or emails that I could recall. I trusted my wife, so there was no reason to think twice about any of the things she was doing. She didn't turn into a witch at home, and she didn't cut me off romantically. It was time to make a few more phone calls. Donald Curry was an old high school friend who worked at the courthouse. I didn't know what he did, but I knew he was involved with computers. I explained the problem to him and planned on meeting him at the glass door when he got off work. Before leaving the house, I called Ronell Home Builders and found out that Bob Gilson was working on an apartment complex nearby. I planned on seeing him right after lunch. I usually finish the Taco Bell burrito, but today I only got through half of it. I was anxious to talk to Bob. The crew was still on lunch break when I arrived. Bob smiled and came over to the car. He seemed a lot friendlier than Margie had been. "Brian, good to see you. I assume you want to talk about Darla?" "Bob, I talked to Margie this morning, and she refused to tell me what was going on. You have to let me know, man to man. I liked Bob because he was blue-collar like myself, but if he tried to jerk me around, I knew I would get pissed. Brian, I usually tune Margie out when she starts in with the work gossip, but this much I do know. Darla has been messing around with a married guy at the office for almost 6 months now. They tried to keep it quiet, but it became common knowledge in no time. Margie stopped talking to Darla when she found out about it, and so did a lot of the other girls. We missed you at the company affairs, but we figured that Darla was keeping you away on purpose. That's about it. I'm sorry I can't do more for you. Do you know who the guy is? No, I don't pay attention like I should. I can find out for you. Don't worry about it, Bob. I'll sort it out. That pretty much summed things up for me. There was no misunderstanding, it was just a stupid husband who had no idea what was going on in his own house. 10 minutes later, I canceled her cell phone service. Now she couldn't call home. I was on my way back to the house when I got a call on my cell phone. The police in Cedar Rapids had found the Mustang parked in the bus station depot parking lot. It had been towed to an impound lot, and I could pick it up any time after paying a $300 fee. I stopped by the police station, and they gave me a hard copy of the report. The only conclusion I could draw was that Darla had abandoned the car and switched over to the bus. There was no way to find out where she went, but I assumed it was westward. I didn't even know that she knew anyone in that area. I stopped by the bank and closed all the joint accounts, opening new ones in my name only. I changed the beneficiary on my insurance policies to the boys. I got to the glass door early and had too many drinks before Donald arrived. Brian, there was a divorce hearing today, and Darla was called to testify. Of course, she didn't show up. Marcia Ridgway was divorcing her husband, Kelsey, using adultery as the grounds. Mrs. Ridgway wanted Darla to testify that she was the woman her husband committed adultery with. So the divorce didn't go through without Darla's testimony. No, it all went just as planned. It seems that Mrs. Ridgway had photos, videos, and taped phone calls that all supported her claim. She didn't really need Darla's confession. I think she had her called just to embarrass her. Sounds like it worked. What is Darla's status now? The best I can tell is that nobody cares anymore. There's nothing new that she can contribute, and it doesn't matter anyhow. Kelsey Ridgway more or less admitted to everything after his wife's lawyer presented all the evidence. The judge granted the divorce on the spot. It becomes final in 6 months. He's getting reamed on child support and alimony. He has 3 kids, all under 10 years old. He will be paying for that mistake for a long time. Donald and I talked for a while until he begged off to get home to his family. I thanked him for the help and asked the barkeep for some coffee. I was going to get one of the red pickled eggs out of the jar on the bar when I remembered the party leftovers. I had a little more to drink than I should have, but still managed to make it home without killing myself or anyone else. It was a stupid thing to do under the circumstances. I wrapped 6 ribs in tin foil and popped them into the oven while I took a shower. By the time I got back to the kitchen, all that was left was a pile of bones. Todd and Terry got home and headed straight for the pork. They pulled my leg a little and then took a second batch out of the stove. Todd was all excited about the Mustang situation. After a 20-minute discussion, I finally agreed to let both of the boys take a bus to Cedar Rapids and drive the car home. I gave them $600 to cover expenses. Terry drafted up a note on the computer giving them permission to pick up the car and drive it home. He seemed to know what he was doing, so I kept my mouth shut and signed it. The next morning, we all had breakfast at IHOP, and I dropped them off at the bus station. I chuckled a little as they boarded. They had no idea what 2 days on a Greyhound would feel like. It was a great life lesson. I called the Cedar Rapids Police Department so that they would be expecting them. They promised that there would be no problems. There was one more thing that I had to take care of. It didn't take long to find out where Kelsey Ridgway's office was. Margie immediately reached for her phone when she saw me. It was too late. I didn't bother to introduce myself. I just started beating him about the head and shoulders. He made a few weak attempts at defending himself but ended up behind his desk on the floor. I kicked him in the gonads a few times before the security guards pulled me back. He was a bloody mess, and I felt a lot better. Things moved fast after that. Before I knew what happened, I was at the police station, in front of a judge, and on my way to the county jail. There was no trial, just a judge and me. I got 60 days and didn't give a damn. First chance I got, I called the boys to bring them up to date. I could swear that I heard Terry laughing over the phone. The house would be okay to sit empty for a few days. Well, things weren't quite like they appeared on television. I mean, it wasn't a walk in the park, but I didn't feel like my life was on the line or that I was going to be assaulted at a moment's notice. Mostly, it was a bunch of nasty farts that couldn't play nice with others and a bunch of stupid kids. The kids and the farts didn't mingle much. A private room was out of the question. I ended up sharing a cell with a 300-pound gorilla named J.O., who beat his wife when he found her in bed with his brother. I didn't know what happened to the brother. J.O. and I got along fine. I took the top bunk, of course. The dining hall food was heavier on carbs than I liked, and J.O. was more than willing to help me out with what I didn't want. Other than the fact that he farted more than any other man in the state, he was an ideal roommate. 3 days later, Terry and Todd paid me a visit. The car recovery trip went perfectly, but they were not looking forward to any bus trips in the near future. They didn't have any information about Kelsey or their mother. They brought me 2 cartons of cigarettes, even though I don't smoke. Todd said he thought they would be valuable for trading. He saw too many movies. J.O., however, was overjoyed when I gave him the cigarettes. He said he needed to smoke to keep his weight down. I had no trouble leaving the boys in the house alone, and apparently neither did anyone else. Todd left for school the week before I got out of jail. He took the minivan and left the Jeep for Terry. Terry and I celebrated my homecoming by going to a Red Lobster. He was excited about starting his last year of high school. Unfortunately, he was going to have to struggle through it without me. I had other plans. Margie couldn't believe her eyes when I walked past her desk the next morning. I winked at her and went straight into Kelsey's office. 3 hours later, I was back on the bus to the county jail for 6 months this time. Terry thought it was funny and immediately called his brother at College Station. J.O. welcomed me back with open arms. Phew, I did a better job on Kelsey this time. I actually think I broke something. Of course, I never got any feedback, so I can't know for sure. I got fired from my job, big surprise there. There was enough money stashed away to make the house payments and cover living expenses. Terry took care of everything with no problem. In addition to Terry, all the other members of my family stopped by to see me on a regular basis. Terry made sure that I always had cigarettes for J.O. Darla's sisters both came to visit and offered sympathy. Neither they nor anyone else in the family had heard from Darla. We actually had a family Thanksgiving and Christmas celebration at the jail. I still had a month to go when I lost J.O. I didn't really lose him, as he just got released before I did. His wife and brother had left for Florida, and he didn't have any idea what he was going to do. Terry thought it was cool to have J.O. as a house guest until he could get settled. He offered to get him a job with the tree trimming company, but J.O. decided he was going to move south where it was warmer. I was thinking Florida. The night before J.O. left, Kelsey Ridgway was found in a downtown alley, beaten to a pulp. He told the police he was attacked by an ape. I thought it was funny because I had an airtight alibi. After my release, I decided that I had had enough of Kelsey. In fact, he was no longer working in the area, and I didn't feel like looking for him. I took a course to learn how to drive big rigs. It wasn't much harder than the dump trucks I was used to. I had to kill a few months until Terry started at Auburn, so I spent the time fixing up the house. I wanted to sell it, but it was in both of our names, and I didn't want the hassle. No one had heard a word from Darla since she left. Terry took the Mustang with him to Alabama because it was a chick magnet. It never did much for me, but I wasn't young and good looking like he was. I found a couple that was willing to buy the house with a cloud over it. I wasn't sure what that meant, but they got a good deal on the price. Their lawyer assured them that Darla's signature was not necessary, and I wasn't about to argue with them. I just wanted out of it free and clear. I used the down payment to buy a rig with a sleeper. Before I knew it, I was on the road and free. I never bothered to apply for a divorce from Darla because I never saw the need. I wasn't interested in getting married again. You don't meet a lot of interesting women in jail, and J.O. turned me off to the alternative. It appeared that Darla wasn't interested in divorcing me either because I didn't get a surprise in the mail. I didn't have any trouble getting work. I wasn't desperate for money, so I was able to be a little picky about my loads. I never carried anything frozen, alive, toxic, or explosive. I also avoided any trips north of the Mason-Dixon line in the winter. It didn't take long to learn the tricks of the trade, and I was actually enjoying my new life. Things got interesting while I was delivering a load of farm equipment in South Dakota. It was June, so the weather was no problem. I dropped off the load and was moving south, about 5 miles off I-90, when I stopped at the Belly Up Diner. It was a hole in the wall, but the parking lot was full of big rigs and cars. The attraction turned out to be breakfast all day long and over the top in size and taste. Most of the customers were locals, but it looked like a few long-haul drivers had gone out of their way to stop there. I just told the waitress to bring the house favorite and coffee. 3 big screen TVs were showing 3 different programs that nobody was really watching. The one closest to me seemed to be running mostly political ads, and one of them caught my eye. John Hemingway was running for the U.S. House of Representatives. He was good-looking and seemed to have a silver tongue. Standing beside him, dressed like Jackie Kennedy with a big smile on her face, was his new wife, Darla. My Darla. I was disturbed when the biggest plate of hash I'd ever seen was plopped down before me. "There you go, big boy. Do you need anything else?" "Tabasco," I said, noticing that the hot sauce was hidden behind the pepper shaker. My server, Betsy, giggled a little as she moved it from its secret place to my plate. "Are you good now?" "Almost." "Who is that woman standing beside that slick talker?" She gave a little snort. "That's Hemingway's new arm candy. He needed a wife so he could run for office. There's a rumor going around that he's not straight, if you know what I mean." I started dumping Tabasco on the pile of hash. "She looks a little old to be arm candy. I guess you can't be too choosy when you're in a hurry. She is pretty, though, and I think older women make better lovers. Don't you agree?" She did look good. Her blonde hair was now auburn and looked like it had been styled at a fancy salon. Her makeup was perfect, and the dress fit her like a glove. It wasn't exactly a dress, more like a tailored suit. I took my eyes away from the television and noticed that my waitress had gone back to work. The hash was great, and it was easy to see why the parking lot was full. My coffee cup got filled twice before I cleaned my plate. The pie looked good, but I didn't have any room left. Betsy took my empty plate and slid the check in front of me. "Is he going to win the election?" "Not if we can help it. He has big money behind him from important people in Sioux Falls. None of the locals want anything to do with him, but we don't have the votes or the money to stop him." I was snickering as I pulled out my money clip. "You know something, don't you? Are you sure they got married?" "Yep, they actually did it on TV like it was a reality show or something. No honeymoon, though. They said they were waiting until after he was in office." I was still smiling when I dropped the tin on the counter. "Mister, you'd better tell me something before you walk out that door. I'm not looking for trouble, and I'm not sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. I would like a favor, however." "What's that?" "Can I catch a couple of hours of sleep out front before I hit the interstate?" "No problem, but watch out for those 304s. They sneak up here every now and then. They're dirty, nasty witches." I nodded my appreciation and was still smiling as I walked out the door. Betsy was watching from the window as I climbed into the rig. I was just starting to enjoy some well-deserved sleep when the banging started on the door. I ignored it for a few moments, but it didn't stop. "Go away." They said it was okay for me to park for a couple of hours. Whoever it was did not leave, so I was forced to open the door. "Betsy said I had to talk to you. Do you have a few minutes?" It was dark and raining. All I could see was a hard-looking woman in a poncho. I didn't break any laws. "Leave me alone. Just give me 10 minutes. She looked and sounded determined. "Sorry, lady, I'm not interested. Go get one of the other guys. I'm not a hooker, damn it. I need to talk to you about Hemingway. I'll meet you inside in 10 minutes. That seemed to please her. She had half a smile on her face as she closed the door. Maybe it would have been better to just let her get into the rig, even though she was soaked. I checked my watch as I pulled out the rain gear. I only got 3 hours of sleep. The restaurant still had a decent crowd. There was an area by the door that held all the rainwear. In a couple of months, that would all be snow gear and boots. She was sitting in a booth by the front window with 2 cups of coffee. Her hair was straight and shiny black with a small white streak on one side. Judging by her complexion, she was an outdoor type of girl, well-tanned and not soft. Actually, she was nowhere near being a girl. She was at least 35, maybe pushing 40. The whole image was rounded out with high cheekbones and no makeup. I held out my hand as I sat down. Brian Connors. Sally Wilmot. "Do you want anything to eat?" "No thanks. I just had the hash special 3 hours ago. I don't think I'll be eating for a while." She responded with a polite smile. "Betsy said that you might know something about Darla Hemingway. I wanted to talk to you before you took off." "What the hell is so important about Darla Hemingway?" "My brother Franklin is running against him in the election." "Oh, I see. This is a personal thing." "Not really. Franklin represents the people in the area, the farmers, ranchers, and Native Americans. Hemingway is looking out for the Sioux Falls businessmen. We are not anti-business, but we don't feel that a lot of people will get a fair shake if Hemingway gets elected." "Okay, but I still don't see what his wife has to do with any of this." "We don't either. All we know is that something is not right. Our election committee tried to do a background check on her and ended up with nothing. His campaign people are not releasing any information about her. This might all be nothing, but we are getting desperate, and Betsy said she thought that you might know something. I guess I better not become a professional poker player if a waitress can read me that easily." She leaned back in her chair. She was right. You do know something. Are you going to tell me, or am I going to have to beat it out of you?" I finished my coffee and grinned. I found her choice of words amusing. In fact, it was downright funny. I waved my empty cup at Betsy and leaned forward. "I think I like the second option best." I have no idea what possessed me to say that. It was not in my nature to be a wise ass or use innuendos. I guess it was because I liked her demeanor. She was confident and straightforward. I got the feeling that she always knew what she wanted and how to get it. Betsy finished the refills, and Sally Wilmot was staring at me. "I'm sorry, that was rude and impolite of me to say that. I'll answer any questions that you may have." Sally covered her mouth and let out a little laugh. "It's okay, Mr. Connors. I'm not that damn sensitive, and I thought your answer was cute. I never should have asked the question the way I did." "Oh good, that means that the second option is still open." "No, damn it. How do you know Darla Hemingway?" "She is my wife. We have been married over 20 years and never divorced. I haven't seen her for a few years, but unless she got a divorce somewhere that I don't know about, we are still married." Sally seemed to be at a loss for words. She didn't say anything at all, she just sat there staring at me. What did she use as a maiden name when she got married? She stammered for a few seconds before speaking. "Oh my gosh, her maiden name was Connors." The witch didn't even try to cover it up. Whoopee! Of course, Betsy came running over, and all the heads in the place were turned towards us. I was a little embarrassed by the attention, but Sally seemed elated. Sally jumped up and kissed Betsy right on the lips. She walked over to the foyer area and took out her cell phone. Betsy was blushing a little and leaned over toward me. What the hell did you tell her? I haven't seen her this excited in 5 years. The smart man that had been hidden inside me for many years was starting to emerge. I looked up at Betsy and said, I told her that you or I were going to get married. She immediately realized that it was a joke, and I was rewarded with a punch on the arm. Are you going to tell me? No, I'll let Sally tell you. I'm going to go back to my rig and see if I can get back to work. It's been nice meeting you, Betsy. The rain had stopped, but I never made it to the rig. Sally had me by the arm before I was halfway there. You can't leave yet. You have to talk to Franklin. It won't take long, just a few minutes. I'd really like to drop this whole thing. I'm sorry now that I said anything to Betsy. How long will it take for him to get here? He's going to meet us at my place. Do you want to ride with me or follow in your truck? I'll follow you. I felt better not having to depend on somebody else for transportation. The Jeep wagon that Sally was driving was at least 10 years old, and probably older. After a couple of miles of road, we ended up on a worn-out gravel road leading to an equally worn-out double-wide trailer. Somebody was there because the place was well lit. There was no lawn, just more gravel, and not much of that. I tried to stay out of the mud, but it was difficult. There were no other cars around, so I assumed that Franklin was still on the way. Just inside the trailer door was an area for wet coats and boots. It looked like a good idea, especially because there were plenty of coats and boots there already. It was an interesting layout, mainly because it looked more like a classroom than a living room. Instead of end tables, there were desks. Instead of table lamps, there were computers. Staring right at me were 3 teenage boys. Hi guys, this is Brian. He's here to help Uncle Franklin. Sally walked right over to the kitchen and started making coffee. I gave my audience a small nod instead of saying hello. I felt a little awkward under the circumstances. I looked around the room but saw nothing to indicate the presence of Mr. Wilmot. Having 2 sons, it was easy for me to see that the boys were close in age. I was guessing 16, 17, and 18. There was no TV or music playing. All 3 of them seemed to be either on a computer or reading a book. The odd thing was that they did not look bookish or nerdy but like normal, robust, and active kids. Brian, these are my sons. The oldest is Tracy, next is Tyler, and the youngest is Tanner. They smiled and nodded to me in turn. I could not resist grinning to the point where my amusement was obvious. I know it's a little odd that we gave them names that all start with the letter T. No, that's not why I'm amused. It's just that I have 2 sons named Todd and Terry. I thought that was a hell of a coincidence. Tyler was the first of the boys to speak. Where are your sons? The question got him a stern look from his mother, which he seemed to ignore. Todd is at Texas A&M, and Terry is at Auburn. That simple statement lit up the whole room. All of a sudden, Tracy came alive as if the Energizer Bunny zapped him. I'm leaving for College Station in August. How long has he been there? What is he studying? Sally finally touched his shoulder. Slow down, boy, slow down. I'm sure Mr. Connors has time to answer all your questions. As it turned out, Tracy had a full football scholarship and was already signed up for ROTC. Tyler had been accepted at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis and was leaving in a year. Sally's husband had been in the National Guard and was killed in the Gulf 5 years ago. She didn't offer any more details than that, and I didn't push for any. Tanner, the youngest of the boys, hadn't decided what he wanted to do yet, but his mother was still making sure that he hit the books on a regular basis. I had no idea what was holding Franklin up, but for the next hour, I was busy talking to Sally's sons about anything and everything. Sally just stayed to the side and watched as I connected with them, just as I had connected with my own. Being with Sally's kids made me realize how much I missed my boys. Franklin Honeycutt finally arrived with 2 associates. After the introductions, Sally put the boys back to work while the adults gathered around the kitchen table. There seemed to be some doubt about my claim to be Darla's husband, and it wasn't important enough to me to get into an argument about it. As I got up to leave, I thanked them for the coffee and told the boys that it was nice to meet them. Sally would have none of it. "Damn it, Brian, sit down," she said. The rest of the faces around the table sat silently. Sally took over the conversation as if she were the one running for office. "Brian, do you have a marriage license or something to prove that you were married to Darla Hemingway?" It only took a few seconds to pull a wedding picture from my wallet. She was older now, and her hair was different, but you could still tell that it was Darla. I looked over at one of Franklin's associates, who had a laptop in front of him. "Go to the Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Office of Records. You should be able to log onto marriage licenses from 1960 to 1990. Just do a search for my name, Brian William Connors." Sally brought me a fresh cup of coffee and a small smile. She seemed glad that I didn't quit. The associate turned the laptop screen toward Franklin. "August 17th, 1979. Is that right?" Franklin seemed a little happier now. I nodded and sipped my fresh brew. "Good luck finding any kind of divorce record. As far as I know, or anyone else knows, I am still married. Feel free to investigate any of this as much as you would like, it makes no difference to me." The conversation began to get a little redundant and boring. This time, no one stopped me as I got up. "Do you mind if I catch a few Z's in your driveway before I leave?" "No, not at all." Sally walked me to the door. I looked back to bid farewell to Franklin and his cronies, but they were deeply engrossed in whatever it is that politicians do. The boys each gave me a small wave or nod as I left. An hour later, I heard Franklin and his group leave. I figured that I was all set for the night, finally, when I heard the rapping on the door again. Sally jumped into the cab with a flannel nightgown on. She put her finger up to her mouth, indicating that she didn't want me to speak. We were far enough away from the house that the boys couldn't hear anything, but I think she just didn't want any conversation. She spent at least an hour with me in the sleeper. It was passionate and loving, but a little uncomfortable. Rig berthing arrangements are great for sleeping, but that's about it. I did the best I could under the circumstances. She left as quietly as she came, no words were spoken. The sun was up when the door started making noises again. It was Tanner telling me to come into the house for breakfast. Luckily, boys and men like the same kind of food, and Sally knew how to make it. I spent another hour chatting with the guys and felt fairly comfortable enough to ask Sally for permission to take a warm shower before leaving. An hour later, I was finally on the road, but not for long. It was a local sheriff who pulled me over before I reached the interstate. It seemed that Mr. Honeycutt needed to talk to me some more. I followed the police car back to the Belly Up, where Franklin was waiting for me. He was in the middle of breakfast and invited me to join him. Betsy brought me coffee and took the opportunity to give me a big wink. She must have been a closer friend of Sally's than I thought. It seemed that Franklin's legal advisors wanted me to stick around. I used the tried and true phrase "time is money" to discourage him, but he just laughed and kept on eating. It would have been very easy to agree to everything and then just skip out, but I decided that I might want to stay a few more days, especially after last night. The party would pay for a motel room and meals, but that was the best they could do. It was a good opportunity for me to get my clothes washed and catch up on my bill paying and banking. Wi-Fi is great. I got a couple of emails off to the boys and paid all the bills. I was just folding my second load out of the dryer when Sally walked in. I don't think I've ever seen a woman who looked better in jeans. She had 3 kids and still had a perfect body. Her blue Oxford shirt was not tucked in but cinched with a silver concho belt. Her skin was shining, not from sweat but from a natural glow. She was a damn good-looking woman. "What the hell are you doing, Brian?" I gave her an innocent shrug. Folding laundry. You were supposed to be gone. Remember, you said you were leaving this morning. Things changed. Your brother asked me to stay a few more days. The only reason I came to see you last night was because I thought you would be gone today. I can't have you around here. She was fumbling for words. It seemed that she was not expecting any type of relationship other than a one-night stand and had no idea how to handle it. I was amused at her frustration and considered it an opening for some fun. After talking to Franklin this morning, I was seriously thinking about buying a house and staying here permanently. He made it sound pretty good. Now I know when I smell it what is really going on. I sat Sally down on the bench beside the dryers. Your brother insisted that I stay a few more days just until they could get something set up to go after Hemingway. I promised to stay away from you and the boys until he gets everything done. I didn't mean to embarrass you or do anything that would make you feel uncomfortable. That's not the problem, Brian. The boys like you. They wanted to know when you could come over again. They were a little upset when I told them you were leaving. Tyler wanted me to talk to you about staying around a little longer. I'm sorry, I was just trying to be friendly. They reminded me of my own, and it was easy for me to talk to them. I didn't want to create any problems for you. Of course, I didn't make things any easier when I came out to your truck last night. You definitely made things hard, I replied with a grin and a playful jab in the arm. Why did you come out to see me? Sally shrugged and looked a little embarrassed. I'm not sure. It's been 5 years since my husband died, 5 years without any comfort or passion. It just seemed like the perfect opportunity, especially since you were supposed to be leaving today. She was starting to get a little feisty with me again. Why didn't you leave? Damn it, I said, picking up a pile of folded laundry and handing it to her before grabbing the rest and walking back to my motel room. She hesitated a moment at the door until I held my finger up to my mouth, just as she had the night before. Her coy smile was followed by a big grin as she shut the door behind her. It is a lot easier to make love to a woman in a proper bed. However, the part one enjoyed the most was the shower. Even running out of hot water didn't stop us. Before she left, she made me promise to be at the house for supper at 6 o'clock. How could I refuse? I was ready. Hell, I had 2 showers today already. Supper at Sally's became a regular thing, and Betsy became my greatest ally. Betsy and Sally have been friends since childhood, and Betsy took great pleasure in telling me all about the things they did when they were younger and all the boys they jerked around. Discussions about Sally's husband were sad and not nearly as frivolous, but it gave me a good idea of who Sally was and why I wanted to get to know her better. It was never my intention to remain in South Dakota, but the longer I was here, the more I wanted to stay. By the end of the first week, the boys all had Texas A&M t-shirts and sweatshirts from Auburn. Sally kept one of the Auburn shirts for herself. It was a little big for Tanner anyhow. I wasn't paying much attention to the political jousting. Franklin and his team seemed to be doing fine without me. Somehow or other, the press found out about Darla's shadowy past and started to play it up. Hemingway's people tried unsuccessfully to downplay it. The more they denied or ignored it, the worse it got. His numbers started to drop rapidly. I never got involved in any of it until I received a surprise visit early one morning at the motel. The woman at my door was tall, blonde, and straight as a pole. I was still in my boxers but invited her in anyhow. Her eyes avoided me as I pulled on a shirt, but I watched every movement she made. She wore a dark suit with a white shirt and low black heels, definitely a professional of some type. I wanted to take a leak and get a cup of coffee but instead forced myself to sit at the small table that came as standard issue in every American motel room. My name is Mary Beth Steins. I'm an attorney from Levitt's Brothers in Sioux Falls. I assume that you are Brian William Connors? She knew my middle name. This was not good. Excuse me for one moment, I said. I got up and walked into the bathroom. Although I closed the door, I was sure that the noise I made when my water hit the toilet bowl was noticed. I was going to try and hold it a while, but I felt that this pompous woman needed a little humiliation. Less than a minute later, I returned to the table. Was that necessary? No, but I figured from your tone that we were going to be here for a while. Sorry, but I was just trying to be professional. You missed it. What the hell do you want? Our company represents John Hemingway. We recently learned that your marriage to Darla Connors was never properly terminated, and we were hoping to rectify the problem. How? There are statutes available within the state to allow for rapid terminations of marriages in certain circumstances. We feel that we can take advantage of these statutes with your cooperation. You mean that you want me to divorce my wife? Yes. Why would I want to do that? My guest seemed befuddled. I don't think she was expecting that reply. At this point, I would welcome the divorce, but on my terms, and I didn't want to let her know that. Miss Steins? I said. Steinmetz. Miss Steinmetz, will you please tell me in layman's terms why my wife and I are no longer living together? Don't sugarcoat it and be completely honest. If you can do that, I will consider continuing our conversation. She leaned back and undid the top button of her blouse. 3 years ago, your wife had an affair with a coworker. When you found out about it, she ran away because she could no longer face you or your sons. She has not been in contact with any of you since that time. Is that plain enough for you? That's good. In fact, you hit the nail on the head. So what is the problem? If you're following the news, you're aware that Darla and Mr. Hemingway got themselves in a little bind. We can't undo what has been done, but we're hoping to alleviate it a little by getting her a quickie divorce. Right. And tell me again, what do I get out of it? Freedom. Hell, I'm happy with the way things are now. You're going to have to show me how my life will be better, not the same. What do you want, Mr. Connors? Do you want money? How much? Give me something to work with here. What are the terms of the divorce that you're proposing? There are none. That is why it can be done so quickly. No money changes hands, no assets to divide, and no custody issues. You both walk away with what you have, and neither one of you owes anything to the other. It's clean and final. How long does this take? Less than 90 days. That means it will be final before the election? Yes, I believe it will. She admitted it but didn't want to play it up. Do I have to see my wife? No, in fact, we would prefer if you didn't. Do I have to stay here until it is over? This question brought a sigh from my guest. Yes. Okay, I'll agree to it on one condition. You have to pay for my room and board until it is completed. Mary Beth Steinmetz suddenly got a smile on her face. I could tell that this was better than she had hoped for. I probably could have hit her up for some big bucks, but right now just getting free sounded good. I can prepare the papers and have them ready for your signature this afternoon. Would that be okay? Perfect. I will have to check with my lawyer, but I don't think there will be a problem. I don't have a lawyer, but I wanted to run it past Franklin first. Your lawyer? Give me your card. I promise to call you if there's anything he doesn't like. If you don't get a call, bring me the papers. I was glad that it was over because I needed some breakfast. I walked her to the door barefoot, in my jeans and no shirt. As she drove away, I saw Sally across the parking lot. Before I could wave her over, she sped down the road. After a quick shave, I dressed and headed over to the Belly Up. Betsy gave me a stern look with my coffee. Do I get a chance to explain? Not to me, Mr. Connors. You'd better have a good story for Sally, though. The breakfast was hot, but the company was cold. I finished as quickly as I could and called Franklin. He was out of town, but we talked for 20 minutes. He was tickled pink about the whole situation and told me to go with it but make sure that I got copies of everything. He sounded like he had control of the situation no matter which way it turned. I asked him to call Sally for me. He was still laughing when he hung up. There was a big power wash station down by Interstate 90. I spent at least an hour getting the rig steam cleaned and vacuumed, then finished it off with a hand wax job that took another hour. It would have been easier just to pay and have it done, but I needed the therapy. I grabbed lunch at Cracker Barrel before heading back. I avoided the wrath of Betsy this time. She was parked right by the door to my room. Sally got out of the Jeep as I pulled up and looked a little sheepish. It was easy to see from her expression that Franklin had called her. She spent the next 2 hours apologizing to me. Sometimes guilt is good. She was gone when Miss Steinmetz returned with the papers for me to sign. For some reason, she also made me accept a check for $10,000. Hemingway's campaign continued to go down the tubes, but my divorce petition moved right through the legal system. Tracy was now at College Station and had a friend to look after him. I was officially divorced just before the election. Franklin won and promised to pay me back for my help. I didn't feel that I did anything, but I told him that I would call it even if he gave me a sister. That got me another punch in the arm from Sally. Things didn't go so well for Darla after the election. Somebody decided to charge her with bigamy. Anyway, before they could do anything, she just disappeared. She was good at that. I never got to see her or talk to her. I sold the truck and bought a house in a small gravel pit near Huron. Sally and I married at Christmas, and my 5 teenage boys were all there. Betsy moved into the double-wide and promised to take good care of it. The sonogram said we were going to have a girl. Anybody know any good girl names that start with the letter T?